Right, good morning, everybody. It's 9:30 and the inquiry is resumed. This inquiry is into the appeal made by Bloor Homes and Paul and Linda Buckingham in relation to a full application for residential development of 269 dwellings, use class C3, 2 vehicular access points off Dunton Road, formal and informal open space, hard and soft landscaping, including acoustic barrier and associated infrastructure. This is the second day of the inquiry. Usual reminders, please, mobile phones turned off or switched to silent. On the first day, we heard the opening addresses from the main parties, interested parties and residents, and started the council's case in terms of Mr. Reynolds, and we will be hearing from, is it Mr. How do you pronounce it? Hardjest this today, and for a remainder of this morning. Before we do, does anybody else wish to speak who's not already elected to do so? No. Are there any procedural or housekeeping matters that anybody needs to raise?
Just to say, Madam, morning, that the 106 that you handed yesterday has references in it to different plans. There's in particular, the plans for some of the highways improvements that are envisaged.
Right.
And we're at the moment stapling together a little clip of that. I don't need to do it now, but later on, once got it stapled, I'll hand you that set of plans later on this morning.
Okay, fine.
Obviously, everyone else has already. I say everyone else. Certainly, the council's seen it. I'm not sure Mr. Dad's has seen it, but I'll hand him one as well.
Okay. Fine. And nothing else outstanding then.
Don't think.
Okay. Over to you then, Mr. Simons.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hardjest.
Good morning.
Right then. So, we will touch on matters broadly in this order. We'll just touch briefly on what the determinative test actually is that the inspector has to address. But given all the things you said yesterday, it's not going to take us long. I think we all know what it is. I'll ask you some questions about the statutory development plan. I'll then ask you some questions about other material considerations, which is more or less everything else, including the withdrawn plan, the various benefits and that you've identified and all the rest of it, and also, of course, the issues around locational sustainability, and then finally how the balance should be struck. So that's where we're going. First, then, the test, and you referred to it several times yesterday, but just to be absolutely clear before we set off together, so 148 of the framework, which is, I'm sure you've all got it separately, but it's called document 8.20 if you don't have it separately. Page 43, para 148.
Yes, I have it.
Inspector can grab it, although I know she knows you went over it yesterday, so she knows what it says. We're in 148 territory. We know then that the requisite very special circumstances won't exist unless the potential harm to the green belt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm, so i.e. all harm, yes, all harm, whatever that might be, is clearly outweighed, and obviously we'll go over this later, but you put a particular emphasis, I think, in your evidence on that word, understandably, is clearly outweighed by other considerations. And other considerations, I suppose, is more or less everything else. So the scheme's benefits, for example, whatever they might be. So if the benefits do not clearly outweigh the harm, which is your case, or what I think, we'll come back to it, then we agree that the test has failed and permission is refused in those circumstances.
Yes, I agree. And
if the benefits do clearly outweigh the harm, then the test is passed and permission should be granted.
Yes, I agree.
So either way, that is a determinative issue, one way or the other.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And we'll talk later about what implications the evidence from Mr. Reynolds has on your planning evidence. I'll come back to that later on. You were touching on it towards the end of your examination in chief. I'm assuming, but I should just ask at the outset, that you are still here defending the council's case on balance. So does it remain your position, having reflected on things overnight, that you're still able to tell the inspector that the test has failed, and so that the permission should be refused?
Yes, that is still my position. Yes.
Right. So okay. We'll come back to that. Right then, so that's the test. But let's start with the statutory development plan, aged though it may be. So let's start with the 1998 plan itself, from which certain policies were saved. The 1998 plan is at core document 8.19. Tell me when you're there.
Yes,
Lovely. Thank you very much. This is the 1998 plan from which certain policies have been saved and still forms the statutory development plan for the area. If we turn into, it's paginated page 1, it's a few pages in, PDF page 6.
Yes.
We see what the process was that led to the ultimate adoption of this plan. You see those series of dates?
Yes.
And the work on this begins in 1990, and then there's a consultation draft which is published in 1992, and the inspector can follow through the different stages that led to its ultimate adoption in 1998.
Yes.
We're told, so far as the period that this plan's interested in, if you turn over a couple of pages to page 3, I'll give the paginated page version if that assists. But if anyone wants PDF pages, do just say. Page 3, we are told at 1.2 what the period of the plan is. It is 1991 to 2001, a period of 10 years. But we are told, we'll come back to this, that some aspects of the plan, and indeed how right this was, some aspects of the plan, the Greenbelt boundaries, will endure for what is called a longer period. See?
Yes, I do.
And just while we're on this page, just note, we'll come back to this later, but a couple of paragraphs above 1.2, it says, for the purposes of this plan, the Essex structure plan, to which we'll come back to, is defined as the plan approved in 1982, and the subsequent first and second alterations.
Yes.
Okay, that's what when we do see later Essex structure plan, this is what we're talking about. Right then, so moving on, what was the plan for? We see at page 5 of the plan a heading objectives.
I'm just reducing the size of.
Not at all. No, not at all. Not at
yes.
all. Objectives of the plan, and at 1.9, we're told there's a number of objectives. I'm certainly not going to go through all of them, but the first one was to define. So this is 1.9 Roman 1, to define the inner Greenbelt boundaries around settlements within the district and maintain their permanence and protection as far as can be seen ahead. You see?
Yes.
So it was looking to define Greenbelt boundaries as far as can be seen ahead, whatever that means, and it tells us what it means in a moment. It also was intended to, at Roman 2, make available sufficient land for housing within the district to meet the structure plan requirements.
Yes.
And we've seen what that means a couple of pages above. Now, what were those requirements? What were the requirements that this plan was designed in order to accommodate? That's explained on the next page. On page 6, there's a heading at the top, the context of the plan.
Yes.
And at 1.12, we're told on page 6 that the policies of the Essex County Plan, as expressed in the Essex Structure Plan, have a direct impact on the local plan. The most significant policies, which apply directly to Basildon, are set out below. And the first one of those at 1.12 Roman 1 is provision in the structure plan for the development of 11,300 dwellings up for between April 86 and March 2001. And that was reviewed and revised to, if we look down to the end of that mini paragraph, 10,750 net for the district. And that slightly lower figure is the figure that's used in this plan.
Yes.
That adds up to, on my maths, I'll be told if I'm wrong, my maths are not to be relied on, Mr. Hard, just at the best of times, I think 717 homes a year, which is to say 10,750 homes total over a period of 1986 to 2001, which is a 15-year period, 717 divided by 15 is, I think, 717 homes a year. I'm not asking you to do the maths, but
I believe your maths are correct. But I'm not going to check them. But what I would say is I don't know the time period that's covered by the second alteration.
Yeah.
The time period you refer to, I believe, from these words is from the original structure plan. But as stated, there were 2 alterations. So I don't know what the time period is that's covered.
Yeah. The annual requirement figure that's expressed through this plan is, and again, will be corrected if I'm wrong, as 717 as we understand it. But the annual requirement figure to be met at the moment is, and I'll just give you, I can give you a reference, but I don't think it's agreed as between us. If you take a local housing need figure, which is 1043, and you add on the relevant buffer, we agree that the figure is 1252 a year. And that just for the inspectors.
I believe that is, without looking it up, but there's a figure. I think that is the figure that is from the 5-year housing test.
Correct.
In terms of how that test is applied.
Correct.
It's not the same as a structure plan figure. Or
oh, it's certainly not. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not for a moment suggesting it's anything like the same as a structure plan figure. They're 2 completely different things. But it would be right to say, I think, unsurprisingly, given that we're talking about a structure plan figure versus a local housing need figure, that the current requirements placed on this district in terms of this borough, in terms of delivering homes, is very significantly greater than that which formed the basis for the 1998 local plan.
Just to be absolutely clear, it's very significantly greater in terms of applying the 5-year housing need test.
Yes. Thank you. Which at the moment is the test that it's the only annual requirement, if you like, that there is.
Local plan.
Yeah. So the only target that we've got in Basildon in terms of annual housing delivery at the moment has gone up, we agree, very significantly since the time of the structure plan figures, which is unsurprising, inevitable really, but there we are. Okay. That's the housing numbers that this plan was designed to accommodate. What about Greenbelt? The Greenbelt is covered by section 4 of this plan, which starts on page 17.
Yes, that's PDF page 22.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, section 4, Greenbelt, policy context of 4.2. We're told that Basildon District's settlement pattern is largely constrained by the Greenbelt, by the Metropolitan Greenbelt, as extended by the approved structure plan in 1982, sets out the familiar purposes of the Greenbelt. 4.2. At 4.3, we're told that it's the role of this plan to define the Greenbelt boundary around the urban settlements in Basildon District. And at 4.5, we're told that a review of Greenbelt boundaries has been carried out, and this plan now defines the precise boundaries of the Greenbelt around the urban areas of the district. It reviews boundaries which have been established earlier in 1976. Yeah?
Yes.
Right. At 4.16, a couple of pages on, we're given a little bit of context for why this exercise is necessary in the 1982 structure plan confirmed the whole of the district lay within the Greenbelt, but did not seek to define any detailed boundaries itself. So it's the role of this plan to sort of fill that gap, if you like, and design those detailed boundaries.
Yes, that's what it says.
4.21. We start to get more of an idea as to the timelines that this plan had in mind for how long its boundaries would endure. At 4.21, we're told the Greenbelt boundaries established in 1976, 1982, and indeed in the Billericay plan in 1989 have been carried forward and reviewed to see whether exceptional circumstances exist to produce the boundary that's now shown in this plan. GB1, we'll come to that in a moment. The policy balances these purposes with the need to maintain the Greenbelt, quote, as far as can be seen ahead. You see?
Yes.
And again, we get a bit more detail about that at 4.23. The replacement Essex structure plan will take that plan, and that is to say the original structure plan, into 2011. The County Council have, however, in commenting on the Basildon local plan in 1992, stated that, this is from the county, it's considered that the release of Greenbelt land for housing needs post-2001 is premature in the absence of strategic guidance on development provision up to 2006 and beyond. They do not feel there'll be much scope for substantial changes to the Greenbelt in South Essex in the period post-2001. There being no strategic guidance to 2006, the plan cannot foresee the scale of long-term expansion that far ahead. Do you see?
Yes.
So when it comes to this issue that the plan set for itself, defining these boundaries as far as can be seen ahead, this is not a plan that is able, for reasons that are explained by the county, to look beyond 2001, or certainly not up to 2006.
Yes, that's what it says. Yeah.
The top of the following page, top of page 22, we see having provided for long-term growth into the next century, so i.e. up to 2001, by the allocation of land not required for the purposes of the Greenbelt, there's a clear indication that such districts need not provide development land outside urban areas on a continuing basis. And we also see at 4.24, looking at what the inspector said about the local plan at the time, in the inspector's view, third line down, the provision of the plan for housing post 2001 is sufficient and would impose a severe constraint on the structure plan review, which of course in the end doesn't happen because the planning system changes. Do you see?
Yes, I'm just trying to.
Oh, sorry.
I
Yeah.
have what it said. So. Yes.
Yeah. So that's all maybe very interesting, but what does it mean? It means, doesn't it, that this local plan was predicated on the housing numbers of and the population projections with respect to a completely different generation.
It was predicated on the position up to about 2001.
Yeah, of a completely, I mean, we agree, therefore, don't we? I mean, we're talking about numbers that are generated from the 1980s and then amended. And they were only ever supposed to take us up to 2001, beyond which this plan could not see.
Yes, it had difficulty seeing beyond that, yes.
The boundaries of the Greenbelt in Basildon have not been amended since this plan.
That's correct, yes.
So let's just think about the consequences of that for our inspector. The basis upon which this plan was built, the needs upon which it was designed to accommodate, it was completely out of date.
We don't know. There is no assessment that has been undertaken for the period post 2001. So in that sense, yes, it's out of date.
Yeah, it's completely out of date. I mean, in that it doesn't reflect anything even vaguely close to a modern legal policy, the modern legal or policy context that pertains to planning today.
Yeah, I mean, you would say that the policies are out of date. Yes,
you would.
Yes,
they're substantively out of date
in terms of the policies contained in that document, in terms of the specific allocation of sites and detailed boundaries. In terms of the principles of the policies, which have been saved, they are not out of date. That's why I'm trying to make this distinction. I
see.
There are
elements in there that remain.
Yes,
that's
that
fine,
are not out of date.
But the detailed boundaries are. They have to be, because they were drawn up to accommodate needs that are now vastly outstripped in the current policy context.
Yes, I would say the boundaries are out of date, where there's no analysis that has been undertaken that can confirm that they are not out of date, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, thank you. The boundaries are out of date that the plan fixes. They're as it were substantively out of date for the reasons that we've been over. But it's also right, isn't it? We agree that all of the most important policies in this plan for determining this appeal are deemed out of date as a consequence of 11D and footnote 8 of the NPPF.
I wouldn't say that, because I would say that the two key policies, the Greenbelt policy and the Built Environment Policy 1, are about principles.
Yeah.
And they were evaluated in 2018.
Yeah.
And were found to be, in one case, not out of date. In one case, I forget the precise term, but there was an element of which the affordable housing policy.
Turn up the framework then.
Yeah.
Paragraph 11, page 6.
Yes.
Decision taking halfway down page 6. We're not at C because there's no up-to-date development plan, but we are at D. D, where there are no relevant development plan policies, well, we're not in that territory, or where the policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date. Do you see what I'm reading?
Yes.
And then out of date is defined by footnote 8. Do you see?
Yes.
And footnote 8 tells us that this includes, for applications involving the provision of housing, just pausing there, this is obviously we are such a one.
Yes.
Situations where the local planning authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply of deliverable housing sites with an appropriate buffer as set out in paragraph 74. And obviously that's us, isn't it? Here.
Yes.
Or where the housing delivery test indicates delivery of housing was substantially below, i.e. less than 75% of housing requirement over the previous 3 years. And that's us too.
Yes.
So both of the triggers, if you like,
Yes.
in footnote 8 are triggered, for want of a better
correct,
term,
yeah.
here, which means that we know, as I've just said, that the most important policies in the development plan, all of them, are deemed out of date as a consequence of 11D of the framework.
Yes, accept that.
So they're deemed out of date, but also there's an element of substantive out of datedness too, so far as the boundaries are concerned, as you've explained.
Yes, as we've discussed.
All right. And the deemed out of datedness and the substantive out of datedness, that stuff all has a bearing on the weight that the inspector attributes to accordance with or not to the statutory development plan.
Yes.
Thank you. Right. Let's, having been over their status, if you like, let me just ask you about a couple of the policies, the couple that you particularly rely on. And we'll do it, if it's all right, we'll do it with reference to the 1998 plan, because there's interested obviously in what policies are saved, but also perhaps just for a moment in what policies weren't saved as well, just to put them into context. So 8.19, core document 8.19, where we left off. Now, policy GB1, that's the first policy that you rely on. It's on page 19 of the plan. You tell me when you're there, Mr. Harchest. Have you got that one?
Yes, I've got it. I just wanted the
saved version.
The saved version as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, well, there shouldn't be any difference, but anyway,
No.
let's see. So what policy GB1 does, have you got that, Inspector? Yeah, what policy GB1 did was to define the Greenbelt boundaries. Yeah, and that, as shown in the proposals map, that was what GB1's about.
Yes.
That's GB1, and that's the first of the two policies that you were talking about yesterday. GB2 is on page 29. GB2 was not saved.
Yes.
For whatever reason. But it is on page 29. It's just worth seeing what it did say, although obviously important caveat, it no longer is part of the statutory development plan, but it was in 1998. GB2 is the one that actually tells us what to do when schemes come forward, which happen to be within the Greenbelt as defined by GB1. GB2 no longer part of the plan, but what it told us is that we shouldn't be granting planning permissions for things in the metropolitan Greenbelt, except in very special circumstances when it comes to new buildings, other than for a number of specified exceptions that are set out there.
Yes.
That policy no longer part of the plan.
That's correct.
Which means that when it comes to not how the Greenbelt is defined, how to make development management decisions for schemes that come forward in the Greenbelt, the statutory development plan is silent.
That's correct. So that means we are forced upon.
We'll come back to the NPPF. Absolutely. All I'm asking about at the moment is the plan. Yes. But that means if the statutory development plan is silent on what to do from a development management point of view with schemes that come forward in the Greenbelt, there's no conflict with GB1. Because all GB1 does is to draw lines on a map. It doesn't tell you what to do with those lines. GB2 did, but GB2's no longer saved.
Yes, I accept what you're saying.
Was not saved.
I accept what you're saying there.
Good.
Clearly, then, as far as the statutory development plan is concerned, that is correct.
Yeah, we obviously can't forget about the NPPF.
That means, as we've been through, we're in the situation in para 11 of NPPF.
Of course.
So, which does clearly state what is and is not acceptable within the Greenbelt.
NPPF is very clear, but I'm not yet. We've agreed already that is the determinative test. Yes. Is at 148. The framework, but you were giving evidence yesterday that we conflict with the development plan, so I've got to ask you about that first. And in fact, we don't conflict with GB1 because GB1 doesn't set out any development management tests. That those are in GB2, but GB2's gone. We agree, I think, on that analysis. Good. All right. And then the other policy that you referred to was, I think, let me get this right, BASBE12. Correct. Which I've got it in the original plan. I don't mind where you look at it. It's page 124 of the 1998 plan.
$112.
BASBE12.
So which page on the original?
I'm sorry. In the original plan, PDF 129, paginated 124.
Yes, I have it on.
Lovely, thank you so much.
Yes.
And we see actually from the original plan, if you just scroll up and down a few pages, scroll up, you see that this comes in a whole list of policies, all of which relate to the built environment in different ways. Listed buildings policies, ancient monuments, conservation areas, and that's it. And then we get to BASB 12, which is all about causing material harm to a number of things that are set out at 1 to 5 in the policy.
Yes.
Well outside the Greenbelt chapter of the 1998 local plan, which has happened some 100 pages earlier.
Yes.
No reference in this policy to Greenbelt at all.
There is the reference is to harm to the character of the surrounding area. That's a very broad concept. It encompasses.
It doesn't, though, does it? This is what we've got to be very clear about this, about the way that language is used. This was a plan in 1998 that had a very specific, targeted and stringent policy on the approach that one takes to development within the Greenbelt, focusing on Greenbelt purposes and openness, very special circumstances, all the stuff with which we're very familiar, didn't it? That was GB2.
Yes, yeah.
This policy is nothing at all to do with the Greenbelt. It's harm to character, including street scene, not harm to openness, not harm to Greenbelt purposes.
I think that it comes down here to what is meant by the word character.
Yeah, the Greenbelt has nothing to do with the character of the area. It has to do with land that fulfills its purposes and its target of openness.
Yes, I would suggest that openness is part of the character of the area in which the site is located.
Right.
In the same way that Greenbelt is concerned primarily with openness. It is a character of the site. It is a character of the area in which it is located. It is affected and it is accepted by all parties that there is a direct, even if a localized impact on openness. And I would therefore consider that it is adversely affecting the character of the surrounding area.
Do you appreciate that there is no freestanding character and appearance objection that the local authority are adducing as part of its case on this appeal?
That is correct. The reason for refusal refers to the impact on the openness of the greenbelt.
It does, and it's not just me sort of taking techie points about it. Mr. Reynolds, who gave evidence yesterday, who's a landscape architect, in his proof of evidence says nothing at all about character. He talks about greenbelt purposes. We went over yesterday, openness and all the rest of it. Haven't we got to be a bit careful about which policies we're using for the greenbelt's a very specific spatial policy that's designed to fulfill purposes that are explained clearly in national policy. Character policies are completely different and are about different things. They're very important, but they're no part of your case.
Well, I still maintain what I've just said in terms of I do believe that openness is part of character.
All right, that's one for the inspector then, as to how she interprets that. But we do agree, do we then, that you rely on, I think, the reference to the word character, albeit we agree there's no character and appearance objection from the council.
There is an objection by the council on grounds of openness. And
I know that.
As far as openness may be considered part of the character, if the inspector decides that is the case, then yes, there is an inference about character.
Gosh, that's the first time I've heard that one. So there is no objection from the council, no freestanding objection that relates to the character and appearance, either so far as landscape character goes or the impact on visual receptors.
That's correct.
That's what I was after. There's certainly no objection so far as overlooking, noise, overshadowing or traffic danger go.
No.
There's no reference in BAS B12 to greenbelt openness or to any greenbelt purposes.
Not explicitly.
Okay, so we'll just have to leave it then as to whether the inspector is prepared to sort of infer into that policy, even though there is another policy that expressly deals in this plan with greenbelt openness and purposes, whether she thinks that's another one that was after the same thing. And then yesterday, I think you were, I don't really know where we got to on agricultural land, to be honest, because I think you said it's not on your proof. So maybe that's the end of it, but you still think that there is harm to which you ascribe moderate weight, but it's not on your proof.
Yeah, I was saying it's not in my proof through an omission, a deletion that shouldn't have happened. But I was concurring with the view as set out in the committee report of the officers.
I mean, it's not going to be a determinative factor one way or the other.
Oh, it's a factor that goes in the balance.
If it's not determinative, I won't bother asking you about it. Right then, thank you very much. That's it on the 1998 plan. But let's think about the consequences of what the 1998 plan did so far as the boundaries that it established. If you just take out the map on, which is at document 8.4. This was the Reg 19 policies map. It might be a bit of a chunky PDF, so it might take a moment for everyone to download.
Can I just check whether you require the whole map or just effectively northwest Basildon and surrounding areas? I've got an extract which is smaller.
I was going to, well, I think the whole map, if that's all right. I mean, I can ask you questions about it, and if you about the extract, you probably know the map well enough.
Could take a little while then.
Oh dear. I'm sorry about that. Is it going to take ages? If not, then if it will take ages, I might just ask you some questions that don't particularly, just to illustrate the questions really, but you might be able to answer them anyway.
Let's just see. 8.4.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Not
too bad. There you go. Right. So you've got the policies map. Obviously, it's self-explanatory really, but the green bits are all green belt, and we obviously see that there are a number of then proposed site allocations which include us at H9. You see?
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'm trying to enlarge it and it's not doing it.
Okay. Don't worry.
I'll look at my extract and then we'll see.
Don't worry. I mean, we know where we are. We see then that essentially everything outside the urban areas of the district is washed over by the green belt.
Yes.
We also see that until pretty recently, the council was proposing to release a number of sites from the green belt, including this one, in order to meet housing needs and a load of others. We know you can put that plan to sort of one side of your, or you can close it. We know that as part of that exercise, the council had evaluated the capacity of brownfield land to meet its housing needs, focusing on a sort of brownfield urban land first approach, if you like, as one would expect.
Yes.
And we know broadly, maybe we should just check how much, having done that exercise, the council was able to identify. If you just take out the plan itself, which is core document 8.3, so sorry, I thought you were turning that up. Yeah, if you turn in the plan to page 25 of it.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And if you see on, I'll just let the inspector get there to page 25. It's PDF page 41. 41. Now we see, don't we, at 6.34 that the urban land capacity in the borough is approximately 9,098 homes.
Yes.
Right. And just to put that into context, if you just turn onto the page above, page 24, at paragraph 2, we're told that the local plan at this stage was intending to make provision for 17,791 homes. That was policy SD1, as was.
Yes. I mean, it puts two figures in. One is 17,791 for contributing to South Essex target, and it also has a slightly lower figure of target of delivering at least 15,465.
Yes, sorry, you're right. There are two figures, absolutely. But anyway, both of the figures are well above what could be accommodated simply using urban land.
Yes,
which means that wherever the sites end up coming forward to meet Basildon's housing needs, using land which is, at least at the moment, within those boundaries that were fixed by the 1998 plan, is inevitable.
On the basis of analysis undertaken at that time?
Yeah, and there's been no contrary analysis since then.
I believe the analysis is ongoing, but I don't have details of that.
There's been no publicly available.
No,
I mean,
publicly available.
The inspector can't look at, if you like, an analysis which has superseded this.
No, that is the analysis that was undertaken at that time. The local plan team is undertaking its review at the moment in preparation for the next
don't
version.
worry, I'm not asking you to preempt the outcome of that local plan. That was many moons away, but the council's position, and we see it also in the Greenbelt topic paper, we see it elsewhere, is that without the use of land, at least some land which is currently within the Greenbelt, needs would remain unmet. Meeting the housing needs is not possible without a review of Greenbelt boundaries. That was the position.
That was the position at that time. As I pointed out in chief yesterday, if you look at HELAR 21 and HELAR 22, they identify sites, including sites within Greenbelt, having a capacity of close to 30,000 units.
Yeah,
I do not know what proportion of those are in the Greenbelt and what proportion are effectively brown.
I'm not asking you about the proportions.
No. So what I'm really trying to say is that analysis is ongoing. There are figures around of 30,000 which are clearly close to double the lower figure in paragraph 2 there. All these figures need to be updated, but I cannot say at the moment.
I'm honestly not asking you about the detailed figures, because, as you say, these figures change all the time. But it's the principle. The principle is clear.
I was trying to get onto the principle.
Okay, go for it.
Which is that given that we have some large numbers kicking around there, I cannot say at the moment whether to what extent the local planning process will or will not require Greenbelt releases in the next version of the plan.
Of course we can't. That wasn't what I was asking you. We don't know what the local plan's going to do. They might take the view, as other authorities have, to try and not meet their full housing needs by simply refusing to release any Greenbelt land. But that was not my question. My question is that if housing needs are to be met, it is inevitable, on the basis of the evidence before this inquiry, that Greenbelt land will be required.
On the basis of that plan, that draft plan, which was withdrawn, yes.
Right. It's not just the draft plan, it's the work that went into it.
Yes, the analysis that led to that plan. Yes, I accept that. Yes, it was the analysis that led into that plan that was subsequently withdrawn. Yes, it was inevitable that there would be greenbelt releases.
The plan was withdrawn, but the evidence base wasn't withdrawn. If you turn up to document 8.2.
I'm just trying to say that, actually. We're not disagreeing.
Fine. If we don't disagree, then fine. The evidence base that sits beneath this plan supports the proposition that it's not possible to meet housing needs in Basildon without a review of greenbelt boundaries, which is not surprising because the greenbelt boundaries are ancient.
Yes. I agree. All I'm just saying is that the evidence. I agree, and I'll reiterate that just to emphasize my agreement, which is that the evidence base that led to that plan identified the need to make what I would consider significant releases from the greenbelt, and therefore that was proposed in that the plan that was subsequently withdrawn. What I'm saying now is that I cannot say that the analysis that was undertaken for that draft plan, for that proposed plan, is necessarily valid now, because what we can see is that the scale of total housing sites, even identified in the HELAR, is close to double the number that is in here. Therefore, I cannot say whether that analysis is valid now.
But let me put it to you like this. There is no evidence that you put before the inspector to suggest that housing needs can be met in full in Basildon on brownfield land.
There is no direct evidence, no.
Not direct, indirect, no evidence.
There's no evidence that is in a publicly accessible document.
Yeah, and you've not seen it. Have you seen it, but you're just not telling us about it?
No. The only evidence I would point to is the number that I've identified from the HELAR report, which talks about close to 30,000 units.
Yeah, okay. And that again, as you've already said several times, please try and engage with what I'm actually asking you about. You've said several times that you've got no idea how many of those sites are urban, how many of those sites are greenbelt. You've not done it. You could have done it, maybe someone else could have done it. You've not done it.
That's
so
correct.
My question again and again and again to you is, we know what the evidence base was at the time that this plan was promulgated, which suggested that use of greenbelt land was inevitable. And we've agreed that's what it said. That's what it said. I'm not asking you to prejudge what the next local plan is going to do. Who knows? I've got no idea. I suspect you've got no idea. There is, however, no evidence that you have put before the inspector to suggest that the housing needs of Basildon can be met only on brownfield land.
That's correct. I agree with that. Yes.
There we go. So, at the time that this plan was promulgated, we know that the use of greenbelt land to meet Basildon's housing needs was inevitable. There's no evidence to the contrary that has been produced since then. Normally, national policy would expect that release to be managed through the preparation of a new local plan.
I agree.
But in Basildon, the plan was adopted in 1998, originally.
Yes.
It became time expired in 2001.
Yes.
Some of the policies were saved in 2007.
Yes.
Albeit at that stage, there was no review of any of the greenbelt boundaries, even though those had only been designed to accommodate growth up to 2001.
Yes.
The boundaries haven't been touched since, for example, the introduction of the first framework in 2012, which introduced its requirement to meet objectively assessed housing need.
Yes.
Which, as we know, was a quote radical change so far as the courts were concerned. It's not been changed. The boundaries haven't been touched since the introduction of the government's policies on local housing need in 2018.
Correct.
Or further changes to the framework in 2019, 2021, I'm losing track of how many there have been earlier on this year, any time. So the existing boundaries then, which is in some ways the main reason that we're at this inquiry in the first place, the existing boundaries were drawn up against long superseded national and regional policy.
Yes.
To accommodate the housing needs of a different era that could not, and indeed did not, obviously, because they came so far before it, address modern policy requirements of the MPPF.
Correct.
And all of that stuff has a bearing on the weight to which we attribute those boundaries.
Yes.
Over the last few years, the council has at least had a go at reviewing those boundaries through its now withdrawn local plan. It goes through all the work. We've seen some of the evidence base that goes into all of that work, and there's a lot more that we've not shown our inspector, slid slots in the core documents. All of that work leads to this site being proposed for release from the Greenbelt in that plan.
In that plan, yes.
Before it gets withdrawn in March 22. So that's where we are. But what about the future so far as plan making goes? Why not, as you suggest, simply sit back and let the local plan making system in Basildon run its course? We've got the local development scheme that tells us what the future holds at core document 8.5.
I have that, yeah.
Thank you. This was a document that was produced in November of 22. I think. You see?
Yes, yeah.
So it's a year old.
Yes.
Has there been an update to it?
I'm not aware of one.
No. So this is the latest one, albeit a year old. Okay. So to cut the sort of a long story short, if the inspector turns into, and you obviously turn into paginated page 6, PDF page 9 of core document 8.5.
I have that, yeah.
Thank you. Just let the inspector get it. Paginated page 6. That's we've got the table at the top with the different dates. Thank you. Table at the top with the different dates that take us through Reg 18. Reg 19 is suggested in 2025. Submission in 26. Independent examination also in 26. Report in 27. And adopted in Q4 27. So at the time that the LDS was produced, that was 5 years away. Obviously now it's about 4 years away.
Yes.
Right. Within a year of the examination beginning, that's the idea. The independent examination kicks off Q4 26 and we get adoption Q4 27.
That's what it says.
So let's just reflect on this future that the council projects. Even on the council's best case, if you like, and we'll just touch on in a moment why it is a best case, but anyway, there it is. There's no plan in place for 4 years from now.
No adopted plan, no. Which
is almost 30 years at that point since the local plan was adopted.
Yes.
Just for our inspector, if you like, to litmus test the realism of what's being suggested here. Last time, withdrawn plan that we've just been looking at, last time, you might remember that the plan was submitted to the Secretary of State in March of 2019, the one that we've just been looking at.
Yeah.
And it was examined, before it was ultimately, of course, withdrawn, it was examined not for 1, not for 2, but for 3 years. It was withdrawn in 2022. So we'll see what happens. But it's fair to say, and indeed the risk management bit below the table explains that these dates, well, they're possible, but they're hardly set in stone. They're a projection.
Yes.
And if we just see the sort of reasons why it's true that they're not set in stone, if you see at 4.1 under risk management, do you see where I'm at?
Yes, yeah, I see where you're at.
Where there are several factors which may impact upon the ability of the council to keep the timetable. And there's a page or so of what they might be. Some of them are low risks or medium. I don't think there are only. Oh, there is one low one. Yeah, so the third one down's low. Quite a few of them are medium.
Yeah.
But some of them are medium to high, and indeed one of them's high, which is changing political priorities. Medium to high is changes to national policy, guidance, or legislation. You see?
Yeah.
And one thing we know is that this LDS was promulgated, and it's not criticism in the least of the council because it's only just happened. This was promulgated in advance of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, which has within it a completely new statutory framework for the promulgation of local plans.
Yeah.
So I mean, the council hasn't told us yet, and this is not a criticism, it's just a fact. The council hasn't told us yet if, and if so, the extent to which the new legal basis for local plan examination and local plan making as a whole is going to impact on its local plan process for bringing it forward. No doubt it will in time, it hasn't done yet. So 2027 Q4 possible, but certainly not set in stone.
I agree.
The truth be told, then, we agree that we actually, sitting here today, just don't know if, well, when, we hope, the council will actually get on and adopt another local plan. It could be 2027, but it may well be later.
We don't know. I would take that what's in here was a best estimate that they can make at that time.
At the time, but things have already changed since then,
yes,
and they're set to change even more. And forget about a general election and all the rest of it. But just under this government, things are changing at the moment.
Things are changing all the time.
Okay. So we don't know if and when. Well, I said if you went. We don't know when. I'm assuming that they will one day adopt another local plan. We don't know when that's going to happen. But in any event, we're at least 4 years away.
I would say so, yes.
Now, we're at least 4 years away from the plan being adopted, back end of 27. And then, of course, for homes to spring out of the ground in accordance with whatever policies are in that plan is going to take some amount of time on top of the plan being adopted.
It would take a period of time. It depends how much is done in advance.
Of course it does. Of course it does. So, truth be told, for needs to actually start being met in Basildon, for in particular, let's say market and affordable housing, because we're at a housing inquiry, but other needs too, of course. We are on a plan-led world. We are years away. We don't exactly know how many years, but it is several years.
I think in terms of for development on sites which are on, for example, Greenbelt,
yeah,
we are certainly years away on that basis.
Yeah, thank you.
For other sites, town centre regeneration and so on, which don't conflict with fundamental policies, obviously they can proceed under the basis of the existing plan. Plan framework.
Not quite so, is it? Because the council's also, to be fair, refusing permission for major town centre regeneration schemes as well,
which has been overturned at appeal.
Yeah. So short to medium term, then, no prospect of a new local plan to update Greenbelt boundaries in a way that reflects national policy. It'll happen, we hope, but it's not happening in the next, say, 4 or 5 years, whatever.
Unlikely within 4 years.
So there's no short to medium term of that happening in a plan-led way, which means if we turn back to the MPPF, on page 8, section 3, plan making, we are told, as we all know, at paragraph 15, that the planning system should be genuinely plan-led.
Yes.
But truth be told, that objective, an important objective as it is being failed in Basildon, and has been failed for, let's be honest, a very long time now.
I would agree that it hasn't been plan-led for a significant period of time.
And you said yesterday in your examination in chief that we should all be waiting, essentially, but I'm paraphrasing, but the inspector had a note, we should wait, and this should not be done, if you like, in a speculative appeal-led way, but in a plan-led way. Which, of course, in an ideal world, I don't think there's anyone in the room who would disagree with that, but waiting for whenever it might end up being that a plan actually gets adopted in Basildon is essentially a prescription, isn't it, for a situation that's already bad to get much worse over the next few years, if no development's consented.
If no development's consented, yes, it gets worse. I mean, if they're not consented anywhere.
Let's think about the implications that this failure to follow a genuinely plan-led system in Basildon has on housing numbers. So far as housing numbers go, first we'll look backwards, and then we'll look forwards. We could do it maybe with reference to, I mean, doesn't really matter because I think all these numbers are agreed. But if you just want to take out Mr. Fisher's proof of evidence, Appendix 1, there's the Emery planning statement that's got things like the HDT scores and that kind of thing. You've got it.
Yes, yeah.
Super, thank you. Could you turn into that document at, let's start with page 13, please, 1-3. So it's on mine, it's actually PDF page 56 of Mr. Fisher's evidence, which is the page 13 of his first appendix. Let me get there. Paragraph 4.10.
Yes.
Thank you. So it's just as an easy reference to what the HDT scores is. That's the only reason for bringing this up. Okay. So let's start by looking backwards, i.e. how has delivery fared? And then we'll look forwards, how has that impacted on future supply? So looking at delivery, we start with the HDT, which is obviously a backwards looking measure. And we see that after a 75% score in 2018, it's been in the 40s since then and is now at 41%.
Yes, 21, yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which is, I don't know whether you can confirm this, but we're saying it is. Indeed, I checked and I think it is, but you tell me. The seventh lowest in England.
I haven't checked I would accept that figure.
We know that so far as the framework is concerned, anything under 75% is considered to be a substantial shortfall.
Yes. And
see footnote 8 of the framework that we just looked at together. So I don't know how you're describing 41%, but I mean, it's obviously it's a very substantial shortfall, isn't it? 75% substantial, 41%.
Yeah, it is a substantial, yeah.
Okay. The council has commented on that shortfall in the housing action plan that it's required to prepare as a consequence of its failures to pass the housing delivery test. Keep out the Emery planning statement for later, but the housing action plan that it's produced, the most recent one anyway, because it's done a few, is at 8.22 in the core documents.
Are you suggesting I need to look at that?
Yeah. This is the most recent housing delivery test action plan, core doc 8.22. If you turn into it to page 5, hang on, sorry, page 4, page 4. Page 4, there's a section 2, analysis of housing delivery in the borough.
Yes.
We've got, there's a couple of different tables, and then we're told at 2.4, compared to the housing requirement, there's been under delivery for 6 of the last 8 years, which is all indicated in red. There is, we're told, top of the next page, a persistent under delivery that's resulted in a significant shortfall in housing within the borough. This has had implications for the local housing market and has contributed towards house price increases and reducing affordability in the borough, as reflected in the market uplift to be applied in the standard method, etc.
Yes.
Next section is housing land supply. We'll come on to that in a moment. But at 2.12, we're told, 2.12 on page 5, that until the council's able to adopt a new local plan, it's not expected that the level of supply will significantly improve.
Yes.
As we've just agreed, we actually don't know when that's going to be.
We've agreed, yes.
So at some point in the future, things are going to get better. But we don't at the moment know when that's going to be. At 2.16, page 6, Basildon confirms that its HDT score puts it in the 10 lowest delivering local planning authorities in the country.
Yes,
and it
and
lists all
table
the other
6
ones that are
Table 6 confirms that it is
exactly.
7th.
Oh yeah, there it is. I should have just shown you that before rather than asking you to guess. But yeah, there it is. Yeah, table 6 confirms the top 10 or the bottom 10 in England. Okay, that's looking backwards at the housing delivery test and the situation that the council's in. Looking forwards over the next 5 years, what is the position? The position is summarised in the Emery statement that I've just asked you to look at a minute ago in the table on page 11.
Yes.
Page 11, table 3.1. And we talked a little bit about the nature of this exercise yesterday, in that there's no need, I think we've all agreed, for the council to actually, for the inspector to pick between the figures in this table. I'll just ask you about the council figures, if you like. On the council's own approach, we've got a D, the supply to be demonstrated per year over the next 5 years is 1,252 homes a year.
Yes, for the
for each of the next 5 years.
Yes, for the delivery test,
yeah. And then the supply actually anticipated on the council's figures, not ours, is 2,322. That's in total.
Yes.
Which equates to a 1.85 house, 1.8. Get this out. 1.85 year supply. Or in other words, there a shortfall projected by the council on its own figures over the next 5 years of some 3,936 homes.
Yes.
Which is a position that the council itself does not anticipate being remedied in a material way unless and until it adopts another local plan.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how to describe a situation like that? A couple of inspectors have looked at these numbers, or to be fair, slightly better numbers than this. Things have deteriorated a bit, but anyway, in the last 12 months, or just more than 12 months actually, if you look first at document 6.1, oh sure, sorry.
Just put things away.
Of course, please clear the decks, and then turn to document 6.1, which is the Kennel Lane decision of December of 22.
I have that, yes.
There's two I want to show you that are Basildon decisions within the last 12 months. This is the first one, Kennel Lane, which is in Billericay. It is, as we see on the front page, it was a 200 home outline planning application for 200 homes within the green belt in up the road from us.
Yes.
in Billericay. Now, what did the inspector in this case, after the inquiry that she heard, have to say about the housing land supply position? She comments on it from, let's see, from page 9 of the decision letter. You just turn to page 9.
Yes, I have that. It's paragraph 55.
Exactly. So she's page 9. She under the heading of other under the heading of other considerations. She then goes through a number of different things. First, the green belt review evidence base that perhaps we'll come back to later on. But second, past and future housing land supply and delivery. Let's just very briefly, I'm sure the inspector's read this already, but just to skip over the key findings that she made in December. She said it's common ground that the housing land supply position falls within the range of 1.76 years and 2.3 years. However, during the round table, the council revised its position to around 1.89 years. Do you see?
Yes.
So just to, I mean, there's not much in this, but just to put that into context, the council's case that she's deciding on at this appeal, that appeal was 1.89 years.
Yes.
Whereas in this case it's 1.85. So there's a marginal decrease since then on the council's figures. I
mean, I should say that 1.85 years, just for clarification, is the position at 1st of April.
Right. Fine.
Rather than now.
Well,
we don't know this.
Fair enough.
Be absolutely clear what the figure means.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I've got to be a little bit careful here, because it's true to say, I mean, if anything, it's obviously slightly to have deteriorated since then, but we don't know, because you've not done an up-to-date 5-year housing land supply review.
Because the number of tasks are actually quite substantial.
I totally understand that, but therefore, the council's position for the purposes of this inquiry, as we've repeatedly confirmed, is 1.85 years. Yes. I appreciate that's for the 1st of April base date, as it always is, unless you're going to do a 5-year housing land supply every time you have an inquiry, which in Basildon would be a very, very difficult exercise. Paragraph 55 then, 1.89 years, it's now down to 1.85, I say now, on the most recent evidence before the inquiry. The submitted evidence also demonstrates that in terms of overall delivery, the borough is the 7th worst in the country. We've seen that already. 56 then, the appeal scheme's contribution to boosting supply was not disputed, irrespective of the figure. The inspector said it's clear that the identified future housing land supply is, quote, substantially short of the 5-year requirement. My attention has been drawn to recent decisions. Nonetheless, she said, an acute level of shortfall will remain.
Yes.
So that way of putting it, substantially short of requirement, and an acute level of shortfall, are terms, obviously she used them, but the terms that you'd accept as well.
Yes, I would.
She says at 57, and then she also says at the beginning of 58, that the shortfall is persistent. She describes it as persistent on the back of all the housing delivery test scores. And again, those are her words, but they're words we can agree on as well. Yes. I mean, it's almost just a statement of the obvious, but it's acute, but it is persistent as well.
Yes.
She said at 59 that crucially, during cross-examination, the council accepted that, consistent with the findings of the 2018 topic paper, there remains substantial unmet housing need that, in the absence of an up-to-date development plan, can only be met by the development of suitable greenbelt sites. I think you and me have been over that one.
Yes,
I think that the inspector's got a note of what you say about that. But that was the position that she noted there. And at 60, the evidence before me conveys that at this particular moment in time, the continuation of what is already an acute deficiency, an extremely bleak outlook for local housing provision for a further for local housing provision for a further protracted period, the capability of the scheme to contribute significantly to addressing the extremely serious housing land supply and delivery deficit weighs considerably in favour of the appeal. Obviously, that was then. That was different scheme. That was for 200 homes up the road in Billericay. But we've got 69 more homes here than she was considering there. There's been no improvements as far as HDT goes. If anything, housing land supply has, I appreciate, marginally, i.e. whatever it is, 0.4, but it's got worse, not better. There's absolutely no reason that for our inspector to take a different view, if you like, so far as the approach to housing delivery goes to that which is set out here.
I would say we're in a directly comparable situation.
Thank you. And just for completeness, really, just for our inspectors got a full note of it. We don't need to spend ages on it. There is another decision. It's paragraph. It's core document 6.2. Take that without. So core document 6.2, I'll just let everyone find that one. That was a 11th of November 22 decision of Inspector Woodwards, which related to another site in Billericay. I should say, just for the inspector's note, both of these sites, clear from the reading of the decision letter, had been proposed for allocation in the now withdrawn local plan. I perhaps should have made that clearer before, but anyway. So that was Kennel Lane was, and also this one was at Maitland Lodge, Billericay. Now, so far as the approach to market housing, which is what I want to ask you about at the moment, goes, again, it's similar sort of stuff, so we'll just skip through it, but it's on page 7 of Inspector Woodward's decision.
That's correct, yeah.
And just again for our inspector, so she's clear about what was being talked about here, a housing land supply range was agreed between the parties. Now, this appeal came about a week before the other inquiry. This inquiry comes first. So at that stage, the council was maintaining its 2.33 year figure, and so that was the figure rather than the 1.8 whatever that's now being discussed. So it was on the basis of the 2.33 year figure that Inspector Woodwards goes on to say at 28 that anywhere within this range is a very substantial shortfall. He set out what that means, and he talks about 41% being very substantial under delivery. At 29, he notes that the council accepted housing delivery had been persistently poor over several years, that we've obviously been over. It would be difficult to come to any other conclusion. He says at 29, on the basis of the above evidence, the shortfalls in housing land supply and housing delivery are stark, he says at 29. And then at 30, he says it's important to remember that there are real world implications from the under delivery of homes, including increased house prices, decreased affordability, and an increasing number of individuals and families being forced to remain in unsuitable accommodation for their current needs. So he therefore put, it was only 26 of the homes in that case that were market homes rather than affordable. He put very substantial positive weight on that offer in that case.
Yes, he did.
And again, different numbers, but in terms of the analysis that leads into that view, that very substantial weight should be attracted to that component of the scheme, that it's directly comparable to the situation here.
Yes.
Thank you. That's market housing. I'd next like to ask you about the appropriate analysis for affordable housing. Just again, to start with the numbers, if we can, which I think are essentially not contested, and then to work on to how that should be evaluated by our inspector in a similar kind of way. If we could just take up Mr. Stacey's proof of evidence. Of course, Mr. Stacey not here to tell us about it, but you have you, Mr. Stacey's proof of evidence?
Yes,
thank you very much. Mr. Stacey's proof of evidence, just briefly.
Have you got the court document?
Good question. Don't. Let me just find out. $10.4. Thank you. Right. Does everyone have Mr. Stacey's evidence? Once you're there, if you could turn it into it to paginated page 32, PDF page 36, paginated page 32. Two tables I'd like to show you that emerge from this evidence. All of them on the basis of council figures. Do you have figure 6.3?
Yes, I do.
This shows delivery net of right to buy to affordable housing stock within Basildon between 2014 and 2022.
Yes.
Measured against the annual needs for new affordable homes, which have been expressed through the 2017 SHMA document that the council prepared, or that was prepared on behalf of the council.
Yes.
And we see, don't remember, the numbers sort of tell their own story, but to cut a long story short, in total, over this period of, is it 8 years? Over this 8-year period, there was net under delivery of affordable homes to the tune of 2,640 homes.
From that table, yes.
Which is not contested.
No, I mean, that table is derived from really the detail working for that underpins that table is figure 6.2. And I do have some difficulties with figure 6.2 because for a start, I mean, if you look at, because it includes things like the net right to buy sales and so on, and you can see them. So for example, I mean, he's taken an 8-year period. There's no specific reason to take 8 years as opposed to 5 years, as opposed to 10.
It's taking the period covered by the SHMA.
Sorry?
It's the period, it's the SHMA period.
Okay, I mean, it's just that the point here really is that the numbers are subject to assumptions and there's a lot of variability.
There's no challenge to any of these numbers.
Yeah.
Of course, there's variability. I mean, look, it goes from net minus 85 in 2016 to the most recent monitoring year of 142. So there's all sorts of variability, which is why we've got to look at not just at an individual year, but at trends.
You need to look over a significant period, yes.
There's, just to be clear, I mean, I'd assumed all these numbers were not contested because no one said a word about them, and they certainly haven't been rebutted by you or by anyone at the council.
Correct. They haven't been rebutted by me.
No, so.
But what I would express is that, because, I mean, the warnings are in the, I forget the document number. Let me just find it. In the housing needs analysis undertaken, I think it was by Turleys for the South Essex housing market area. Let me just check which document number it is. They clearly express a warning referring to a couple of cases about relying too much on figures, because there's a lot of uncertainty about the figures as far as affordable housing is concerned.
I'm happy to, I mean, you can obviously, but of course, turn it up by all means.
It's document 840. And it's PDF page 83 or 82, 83.
Yes. PDF 82. Yeah. Which bit?
So for example, it's really the section beginning. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but paragraph 634 onwards.
6.34.
That's on page 82.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
It's and through to 637. Without going through detail, we can go through in detail. The thrust of that is that by referring to a couple of legal cases, Turleys, the authors of the report, expressed concern and caution about the use of precise calculations for assessing housing need. And there are a number of factors there. And I would say that applies equally to the Tetlow-King calculations in Appendix B.
You what, sorry?
That would, those caution, those warnings in effect, encouraging a cautious approach to numerical calculations for affordable housing should apply to the numbers that are presented in Appendix B.
It puts me in a difficult situation, that answer, because again, this is the first time that you're developing it, which is fine. It would have been helpful if there was to be any challenge to these numbers to know about it before the inquiry started.
This document is before the inquiry.
No, I know the documents before the inquiry, thousands of documents before the inquiry. You've not said anything about it until this second. That's okay. Let's just take this in stages. The figure 6.3 on page 32 of the Tetlow-King analysis. Can you point us to anything in the analysis in the table that you, on behalf of the local authority, disputes?
I haven't lodged any.
No, not whether you've lodged it. I know you haven't lodged anything. That's why I'd assumed it was agreed. Just tell us what, if anything, you now, on behalf of the authority, dispute in figure 6.3.
I think it's. No, I won't dispute any figures in the table.
Well, then we've got them. There's nothing for us to fall out over. And we see you've referred to the most recent, I think more recent anyway, document, which is this Turleys one into, let's get the date, sorry, 2022, the housing needs assessment document. We see, don't we, over the page in the Tetlow-King analysis on page 33, there's a figure 6.4. You see.
Sorry, which 6?
Sorry, figure 6.4.
Figure 6.4.
Yeah, exactly. And we see, don't we, extracted from that study to which you've just referred us, what the need figure now is for Basildon so far as affordable housing delivery, and that is now 521 homes a year.
I've lost the page. Oh. Page thing would have been helpful. There's no other pages. I have temporarily lost figure 6.4.
Oh, figure what? Figure, it's not 7.1, it's 6.4.
Yeah, it's figure 6.4. Yeah, I've temporarily lost those pages, which is not helpful.
Oh, good. I can take you to it in the Turley's document if that would help. But I mean, for ease.
Yes, I mean what you see there, the figure of the housing need, which is 521 figure, is taken from the
Turley report.
The Turley report, yes.
Exactly. So
which is the net housing need figure.
The net affordable housing need
net
figure.
Affordable housing need.
Yeah,
figure
and that, what per annum over the plan period, and what we deduce from that, doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to work it out, is that it has substantially increased from the previous SHMAR exercise in 2017.
I haven't got the figure for SHMAR, but
you do. It's on the previous page.
So this is Tetlow King page.
Yeah, the Tetlow King. Do you see what's happened? Tetlow King have on page 32 set out what.
Oh yes, sorry, I apologize. Yes, you're correct.
Good. I say good. Good perhaps isn't quite the right way of describing it, but anyway, the affordable housing need figure has jumped up from say 288, which is what it was on the previous analysis of the year 21-22 in the SHMAR exercise from 2017, to what Turleys are now telling us, which is that it's 521.
Yes,
net.
I think it's important to recognise that it's a net figure. The actual gross need according to Turleys, which is in table 6.7, is 970 per annum.
It's a fair point. So the gross figure is much higher.
You know, the supply that they identify already is about 45% of that, which is 449. So it's net need.
Net need.
So at the moment, excluding right to buy, the council is providing about 40% approximately of their gross need. And they're
meeting a tiny proportion. I mean, the over the last 8 years.
I agree entirely that they are falling well short of what is required.
Okay, fine. I mean, I didn't think there was anything between us at all on that, and it turns out that
I just think it's important to get the context correct when talking about numbers.
Very important. Agreed. The net need is of 521 homes a year looking forwards against net delivery, which over the last 8 years, as we see from the first table I showed you, has been 22 homes a year, 22 affordable homes a year.
And we see that actually from those numbers that the just in the table 6.2, the additions to housing stock from figure 6.2 has improved quite significantly in recent years.
Yeah.
So if we look at figure 6.2, which is column F, we see that in the early part of that period, so between 2014, 15, and up to the first 3 years,
right,
significant negative loss of affordable housing stock.
It has got better.
That has significantly and steadily improved over the latter part of the last 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. But even if we just took an average, I'm not going to try and do it now on the hop of the last 5 years rather than looking at a wider period. I thought you were wanting us to look at a wider period, but if we look at a narrower period.
No, I'm just trying to say that it's about being cautious about relying on the numbers.
Why? What these numbers? What they show is woeful under delivery.
I agree that it's extremely short fall at the moment. If you take, we took it in terms of gross need. If you look at the annual gross need and what the existing supply is, plus what is like, what we have seen from affordable housing providers, part of market housing, private housing developments, which is really what 6.2 is concerned with. It's providing between 40 and 50% approximately on average.
Yeah, but that,
which is very poor.
There remains to be met a net need of 521 homes a year. Yes. When what's been delivered net of right to buy for the last 8 years on average is 22 homes a year.
This is why I'm saying it's about playing with there's playing with numbers here.
Playing with numbers.
No, let me explain. you're emphasising that it's 521 homes net need, which is correct. But you're focusing on the fact that the average figures from the Tetlow one is only 20 odd houses unit. So that implies that you're looking about 4%.
Yeah.
But actually, that's not the correct way of looking at it. The correct way of looking at it is say that the actual gross need is 970 units per annum. There are currently 449 being provided and forecast to be provided according to the Turley report. On top of that, if we take the Tetlow King figure, an average of 20 odd, it's bringing us up to about 470. So it's 470 out of 970. That's about 45%. So it's not a 2% figure. It's a 45% figure.
I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying is that be careful when playing with numbers.
I don't want to do any playing with numbers. I want to try and agree on
it's about the context. Nonetheless, I agree that there is a substantial concern. I have a substantial concern about the provision of affordable housing in Basildon.
Let us see how these concerns have been expressed by inspectors in the two cases that where they've had opportunity to look at these numbers recently. First, Kennel Lane again, which is good document 6.1.
Yeah. That would be.
Page 10 of that decision, we left off at paragraph 60, which was a discussion of market housing. And then the inspector turns to consider affordable needs under the heading ability to meet local housing needs from paragraph 61. Are you with me?
Yes.
Good. She goes through some of the numbers, and then she says that in the fifth line at 61 that the existing position is a clear symptom. Oh, sorry, she says, before we get to that, she says there's uncontested evidence which demonstrates an enormous shortfall in delivery of homes over the next 5-year period. This existing position is a clear symptom, she says, arising from the continuing overall housing land supply and delivery deficiencies in the borough, persistent trend of people being unable to access their own affordable home. She goes over the position there and says at 64, the evidence before me demonstrates, she says, an ongoing, acute and continuing extremely bleak outlook for local affordable housing provision for a further protracted period. And again, to cut a long story short, certainly not playing games with numbers, but trying to sort of ascertain what numbers are really telling us. That was a fair description, and it's one I think from what you're saying that you would accept. I
would accept that it's a poor position at the moment, and for the foreseeable future, the next 5 years. I agree with that.
And a similar comment was made by Inspector Woodwards in the Maitland Lodge decision at document 6.2. If you just turn that one up.
I think it's worth pointing out in that one.
Which one?
This is the Maitland decision.
Yes.
I'm not. Are you taking me to it?
I am. Sorry. Yes, please. Yes, absolutely. No, not at all. Please go. Please. I haven't asked about it yet. But go for it. If is there anything you'd like to say about it?
Well, it's. I mean, the critical paragraphs are paragraphs 31 to 33.
Yes.
On page 7 and 8.
Yes.
PDF pages, and it talks about the current overall shortfall being 2,494 homes. Over the past 7 years and so on, i.e. after accounting for right to buy sales is just 5 dwellings per annum.
Yes.
Now, that, if you look at the Turley report, is incorrect. Because the actual Turley report says, as I've already pointed out, that already committed by the council, there's 400 odd dwellings per annum, compared to a need for 900. That's why I'm saying it's very important to get the numbers in context.
Yeah.
Yes, the 5 dwellings per annum, my understanding of this from the evidence of that appeal, is the supply of affordable homes as a proportion of market housing on private building. It's ignoring the fact that there is another substantial supply. It doesn't make any difference to the level of shortfall The shortfall is still there, but we're not dealing with a situation of 5 dwellings per annum.
I'm not sure. It's very interesting. I'm not sure it actually makes any difference to. I don't think we disagree on what the extent of shortfall is, and I don't think from what you've said that you disagree with any of the conclusions. As it says at the start of 31, the affordable housing need was agreed. Affordable housing delivery, the inspector says at 31 was abysmal.
Yeah.
The shortfall's acute, the shortfall's consistent. There's no evidence, he says, that there's likely to be a marked improvement of delivery in the short to medium term. All of those conclusions you agree with, notwithstanding your point about gross and need.
One I don't agree with is the reference here to affordable housing delivery is abysmal. My reading of these sentences is that is a direct follow-on from the assumption that the inspector made that it's 5 dwellings per annum. As I say, that is incorrect. The figure is more like 490 dwellings per annum, but that still is only half the gross need. It is so I would disagree with the word abysmal. I would consider that the delivery is very poor. And as I've said already, just to reiterate the point, it doesn't make any difference to the quantum of need for new affordable housing. It still remains in the thousands.
You're making that qualification reliant on the jump from, and again, it's not something you've said in your evidence, but that's okay, you're saying it now, reliant on the jump that Turleys make from an estimated annual gross need to an estimated annual net need.
Yes.
And what they do in order to get from gross to net is they make a deduction, and they make a deduction of, in the case of Basildon, just as the numbers turn out, they make a deduction of 449 homes.
Yes, that is correct.
That is a deduction which represents what they call an estimated supply.
Yes.
So they're not making a deduction on the basis of homes that have been delivered. They're making a deduction on the basis of homes which they project.
Yes, it's a forecast.
It's a forecast,
yes.
But that's the point. This is a paragraph that is about delivery, not about what's coming in the future, but about what's happened already. Over the past 7 years, net delivery is...
Tetlow, there are a number... Let's go to that.
Which one?
It's the Turley report. Which I will need to relocate. Okay. Just bear with me. You to put it in the wrong section. Let's bring it up here. Yeah, the breakdown of the 449 figure is
on page 79.
Yeah, I'm referring actually to the breakdown is on table 6.6.
On page 79.
Is that page 79?
Yeah, that's right.
So I've got a PDF, so I'm on PDF.
Don't worry, yeah, it's page 79.
And you can see the breakdown there of how they do it.
You can.
So they've got committed supply of affordable housing.
You can, yeah.
Of 251. A substantial proportion of affordable homes vacated by households in need.
Yeah.
So people move on. So therefore, property becomes available. That's 504.
Yeah.
The emerging supply per annum over 19 years. So that's
40.
That's 40, as you say. And then lettings to new tenants.
Yeah.
And they therefore they base that on 414.
Yeah, none of that's all forward looking.
It's all forward looking.
Exactly.
Yes. So the whole point of this document is to forward looking, is to project the identify the need.
I know
when
that.
we're looking at the need for affordable housing and the weight to be placed on it, which I still place it, is a major concern that I have in Basildon. We are are projecting. We are looking forward.
I know that. No, but we're also looking backwards. And we're keen to look forwards, and we've got your evidence on how abysmal things are. There's no prospect of it improving. But you've just tried to say that the inspector at 31 has made some sort of mistake, but he's not. Your point about gross to net has nothing to do with historic delivery. It's got things to do with how a net need figure should be calculated for the purposes of looking forwards 5 years.
Now, I would disagree, because the net need the historic figure isn't just the 5 units that have been acquired through private building and have been allocated affordable less right to buy. They are concerned with also these other sources that have been going on. These projections are based on an understanding of what has been happening in Basildon.
The bit that's based on an understanding of what's actually been delivered is box D3, which is emerging supply, which is 40 a year.
Yeah.
The committed supply is committed. That's what the council says is.
So I would suggest that the figure of 5 dwellings per year in the Maitland decision is equivalent to the 40 figure. Okay. Because put it the other way around. If the inspector, and I realise there's a degree of speculation here as to what the inspector intended, and I accept that.
Yeah.
That if the inspector considered that all sources of housing supply historically were 5 dwellings per annum, why is it that Turley in this report considered that actually the level of supply that has occurred is nearly 100 times greater?
He doesn't say all sources of supply. He says, can you see, net delivery? That is net delivery of new affordable homes within Basildon, accounting for netting off right to buy.
Yeah.
It's not the same at looking at the fact that people might move on who have existing homes. It's with respect, conflating completely different things. What this inspector said was uncontested at the Maitland Lodge appeal. I'm surprised it's being contested now, but anyway.
I don't think I need to hear any.
Okay, fine. Anyway, moving on from the numbers. Is there anything in that paragraph at 31, not at the numbers, putting the numbers aside, in terms of his evaluative conclusions with which you disagree?
Just bring 31 back.
So anything from the phrase affordable housing delivery is abysmal onwards?
Well, as I said, I disagree with the word abysmal.
You wouldn't call it abysmal?
Yeah.
How would you describe it?
I would say it's very poor, but it's not abysmal. I mean, to me, abysmal was far worse than poor.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you'd accept acute, persistent, no evidence of marked improvement in the short to medium term?
Yes, I would agree with those conclusions.
You'd accept 32, there's some stuff about the waiting list. He says the persistent, extremely low, this is the bottom of page 7, persistent, extremely low affordable housing delivery in the past years has contributed towards this real world harm. Each of the 2,494 affordable homes that should have been built, but have not, represent a missed opportunity to help alleviate the housing concerns of individuals and families. The situation represents a significant conflict with the economic and social overarching objectives set out in paragraph 8 of the framework. And we agree that,
yes,
I mean, obviously we agree that's what he said there, but
I mean, I agree
directly comparable.
I am very concerned about the lack of affordable housing and the implications that this has.
And finally, he says at the bottom of 33, given what he calls a critical situation regarding the affordable housing delivery in the borough, he placed very substantial positive weight on the number of homes that was on offer there, which was obviously much smaller than the number of homes that's on offer here. And again, anything in there with which you, obviously the numbers are different. I'm not suggesting that the Maitland Lodge scheme was much smaller than this one, but but in terms of the analysis, anything with which you disagree?
No.
Okay, so we agree it's critical. We agree that a much smaller scheme than the one before our inspector in terms of affordable delivery was attributed very substantial weight by this inspector. And so far as what he says about paragraph 8 of the framework goes, if we just, I know we all know it, but just very briefly turn it up on page 5 of the framework. We've got those 3 strands of mutually supportive strands of sustainable development at paragraph 8, and the inspector's reference, Inspector Woodward's reference was to 8B, the social objective, where we're told that to support strong, vibrant and healthy communities, the planning system should ensure that a sufficient number and range of homes can be provided to meet the needs of present and future generations. A familiar objective, obviously,
yes.
an important objective.
Yes.
And just to call a spade, it's an objective that's being failed in Basildon.
Yes.
So just before we carry on, I'm just conscious of time.
I know, I was just about to mention that. If I was going to suggest, if I just ask just 2 more references in the appeal decisions, and then it would be an obvious spot time for a morning break if that was suitable. So just 2 or 3 more minutes, and then if you're all right to keep going, Mr. Hargess. Just on those appeal decisions that we've just been looking at, I just wanted to take one more issue out of them before we then break and ask you about something completely different. Those references are to evidence base that was supportive of the local plan. So if you just see what's said about that, first in Kennel Lane again at 6.1. Kennel Lane 6.1, page 9. Under the heading Other Considerations, the first is at paragraph 54, and the subheading is Council's Greenbelt Review Evidence Base. Have you got that?
Yes.
Have you got that, madam? The inspector says that she's had regard to the Council's Greenbelt Review evidence, which led to the selection of the appeal site as a draft housing allocation. However, the local plan didn't reach the stage where the inspector's conclusions on the release of the site were reached. In line with the framework, the withdrawn plan carries no material weight. However, in the absence of both an up-to-date local plan and clear demonstration of a material change in circumstances, which justifies a different conclusion to be reached in respect to this particular site, that evidence base weighs very heavily in favour of the appeal proposal. She said there.
Yes.
Now, of course, that was there, but all of the circumstances that she describes to reach that conclusion about very heavy weight of the evidence base are exactly the same here.
Yes, in terms of the principle of the weight given to those documents, that is correct. In terms of, obviously, as you pointed out, they say different things about different sites, and this is a different site. So, precisely what the evidence base says is going to differ.
Yes, but to the extent that the evidence base supporting the local plan is material, we know that it supported overall the release of the site, the exceptional circumstances analysis and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was the conclusion of that analysis.
Yeah.
And
so to the extent, sorry, don't cut you off.
I mean, that all really relates to Greenbelt and impact
does.
on the Greenbelt, and that was really covered by Mr. Reynolds. Yes.
Oh no, absolutely. I'm not asking you to go back over that. Not at all. I'm asking you to express a view on weight to evidence base as a much more planning question.
I mean, the other factor I would note from what Mr. Reynolds, was saying yesterday was that he placed weight, the weight he attached to the analysis undertaken for the, that led to the Greenbelt analysis in the various reports. He would reduce the weight. He said almost no weight for the oldest reports.
He did
because of changes.
He did,
but of course,
he did. So forget about that. Then you're right. He did. He said no weight for the 2013 one, although he did give weight to the 2014 one that he liked. But that's for another. That's for another witness. The most recent stuff that I think even he agreed our inspector should think about, the most relevant one of all was the 2018 Greenbelt topic paper that looked at our site, looked at all the sites, looked at Maitland Lodge, it looked at Kennel Lane, and we know that a number of sites didn't make the cut, if you like, but ours did, these ones did as well. And the inspector in the Kennel Lane decision decides to give the evidence base, she says it weighs very heavily.
Yes.
And there's no reason that you put before our inspector to take a different view.
No.
And ditto, so that's what was said at Kennel Lane, and really that's it. But just to see that the same thing was decided by Inspector Woodwards in Maitland Lodge. If you just take that out, put document 6.2. Not at all. Core document 6.2. First, for the first page, is paragraph 2, where the inspector says in his introduction to policy, paragraph 2, the plan was withdrawn, its policies have no weight, although the plan and the evidence base, he says at that stage, remain material considerations. You see?
Yeah.
And then at page 9, at 38, he says, this on page 9, the now withdrawn plan and its evidence base is still a material consideration. The evidence base allocated the site for development and the withdrawn plan carried this through to an allocation. However, the important consideration is that the site was found to be suitable for development and to be removed from the green belt.
Yes, it says that.
And so that's what it says there. But again, sort of drawing that out, there's therefore we agree, I think, on the basis of what these inspectors said, and indeed just what your analysis is of the case is that the plan itself gets no weight because it's, as it were, in the dustbin of history. But the evidence base which went into that local plan is still capable of commanding very significant weight as a material consideration.
Yes.
Okay. Very much indeed. That's an obvious breaking point.
Okay, thank you. And from time estimates for remaining.
For the rest, almost half an hour.
Okay. It's just after 11:15, and according to this clock. So we shall return at 11:30. So the inquiry is adjourned.
Sorry. No, it's just my watch is saying, oh no, I misread my watch. That's okay. Oh yes, I do understand that.
move on to the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is your points on locational sustainability. We've already looked at obviously the statutory development plan. We've looked at the emerging plan. We've looked at market and affordable housing. When I was asking you about the statutory development plan, you gave some answers on this policy BASBE 12, you might remember, and it was all about whether it's a character policy or a greenbelt policy, and I asked you about all of that. One thing I should have asked you about at the time, but didn't, so this is going back to that, and then we'll move on to something else, is just to see how that policy has been consistently analysed by other people. So, you know, it's all very well me asking you questions and us giving the inspector what our take on that policy is. What about what Inspectors Dillon and Woodwards have said about BASBE 12, whether it's a greenbelt policy or not? Make up Kennel Lane, please, first, which is document 6.1. Have you got that one?
Yes, I do.
The inspector identifies the main issues at paragraph 6 on page 2, and the first one obviously was all about green belt, openness, purposes, etc. She deals with green belt openness first on pages 2 into 3, and do you see there at the end of this, at paragraph 14, she finds a moderate, on the facts of that case, finds a moderate level of harm to the openness of this particular green belt?
Yes.
Right. She goes on and on through purposes, and she gets to the end of that section and turns to character and appearance under other effects on page 5.
Yes.
And under character and appearance, she goes through all of the different the issues at large in that case, and decides at 28 that the scope of this policy BE 12, and she summarises what it says, and she says no conflict with that policy.
Yes.
So we've got an inspector here who's finding harm to openness, but no harm so far as BASBE 12 goes, so far as character.
That's correct. And
Inspector Woodwards found a very similar thing, core document 6.2. Core document 6.2 is the Maitland Lodge decision. Have you got that, madam? Oh, sorry, I thought you were looking. Sorry. Core document 6.2, not at all. Maitland Lodge, and again, a similar sort of structure. Greenbelt analysis from page 3.
Yes.
Openness in particular on page 3, and then towards the bottom of this sort of section on page 4, do you see towards the bottom of, let's see, paragraph 16, right at the end, there is moderate harm right at the end of that paragraph to openness. Is the finding. I'll just let you. Right, final sentence of paragraph 16.
Paragraph 16.
The overall harm to the openness of the green belt would be moderate.
Yes. Sorry, I was.
No, not at all. Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Good. So that's his finding on green belt openness. So there is harm to a moderate degree, he says. Then he turns on to character and appearance on page 4. Do you see? Oh, sorry, bottom of page 4.
Yes.
He goes through existing, he goes through proposed, he then goes through his assessment of all of that stuff, and then at paragraph 27 he reaches his conclusions. No material harm to character of the area with regard to landscape effects, therefore compliance with the bit that you said's failed, which is BE 12.1.
Yes.
So we've got 2 inspectors who are finding harm to greenbelt openness,
yes,
but compliance with BE 12.
Yeah.
So on your analysis of the policy, which is harm to openness equals harm to character, because openness is a component of character, or the other way around, both of these inspectors are wrong too.
Yes, I would concede the fact that, based on those 2 decisions, that policy BE 12.1 does not cover impact on openness. Right.
So just scrolling back then. So that is a change from what you said earlier.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so just to work that through. Sorry, just give me a moment. The first reason for refusal. I don't know where you've got that. It's I think they're there at document 3.5, but I'm sure you've got them in different places. The first reason for refusal, which is the Greenbelt one, cited conflict with 2 local plan policies, didn't it?
Yes.
And we agree on the basis of the answers you've given today, although not yesterday in your evidence in chief, but you've said today in cross-examination that in fact neither one of those policies is conflicted with.
Well, it conflicts with the boundary of GB1. We went through.
No. If we have to go back over that, we can do. You were very clear in your answer that there is no conflict with GB1 because GB1 defines boundaries, doesn't tell you what to do in those boundaries. Do you remember?
Yes, that's correct.
So we can, if you'd like, and obviously I can re-ask you all the same questions that I asked you to get you to say that last time, but that was your view. There was no conflict with GB1 and there was no conflict with, you're now saying, with BE12 either.
That's correct.
Right. So both of the local plan policies cited in the first reason for refusal fall away.
Yes.
We still obviously have to deal with 148 of the framework, which is what we're coming to. Okay, thank you. Sorry, just one moment. Okay. Thank you. Next topic. Next topic. The issue of if you like locational sustainability / accessibility, however we want to describe it. Now, let's start with what the key tests are that we're considering so far as national policy goes. So if you take out the framework, which is called document 8.20. Once you've got the framework, if you could turn in it to section 9, which starts on page 30. Familiar paragraphs, all of these, I'm sure, for all of us, but just to remind ourselves of what we're talking about. Paragraph 105, the planning system should actively manage patterns of growth. Significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable. You see where I'm at?
Yep.
Through limiting the need to travel and offering a, quote, genuine choice of transport modes. That's what we're after. In some ways, I suppose that probably is the key test. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, is there genuine choice, if you like, for shorthand? Is there a genuine choice of transport modes? Is a location sustainable or can it be made sustainable?
Yes.
Yeah. That's 105. 110 is it the next? Yeah, next page is under the heading considering development proposals. You see?
Yes.
110 in assessing sites, it should be ensured that, and then a number of different things. And in particular, appropriate opportunities to promote sustainable transport can be or have been taken up, given the type of development and its location. Yeah?
Yes.
Just to be clear, I don't think, I'm just reading them through, I don't think there's any issue between us on matters B, C, or D within that policy.
No.
Okay. Para 111, development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there be unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual impacts on the road network would be severe. And again, there's no suggestion from the council that this is a 111 case either.
No.
In fact, you touched on this yesterday, there is no alleged conflict in the reasons for refusal or the statement of case from the council to any of the paragraphs that we've been through in this section in the framework at all. Not to 105,
no.
Not to 110A or any of the others, but certainly not to 105 or 110.
They are not identified in either statement of case or statement of case or reasons for refusal. That's correct.
Okay. Anyway, we'll discuss them nonetheless. Let's just consider, before we get into the detail of the walking distances and all the rest of it, where we are. If you take out the now withdrawn local plan again, at core document 8.3. And if you turn, when you get there, if you turn in it to page 25, PDF 41, paginated 25. It was PDF, I think on mine it's 41. You should have the heading Policy SD2, Settlement Hierarchy and Distribution of Growth.
Yeah, it is 41.
Good, thank you. Have you got that?
I have that, yes.
Thank you so much. So, did you see evidence base at 6.32?
Yes.
There's a reference to something called a settlement hierarchy review.
Yes.
Which identifies a settlement hierarchy, and it identifies Basildon, including Langdon, Pitsea and Notebridge, as the main urban area, which benefits from a fuller range of access to transport choices, services and employment opportunities. It's consequently got the greatest population, and it goes on to consider other settlements. You see?
Yes.
Billericay, Wickford, and then indeed villages and all sorts. So Basildon is, so far as the access to services, facilities, and everything else, transport choices, whatever, it's top of the tree so far as the settlements go within this district.
Yeah, as a settlement as a whole, yeah.
And indeed at 6.33, we're told that employment provision in the borough is aligned with the settlement hierarchy. So the main areas of employment activity can be found within Basildon, primarily within what's called the A127 Enterprise Corridor, and also within the town centre.
Yes, it says that.
There's no suggestion in the, let's have a look. The site then that sits on the edge of a settlement, which is top of the tree, so far as locational sustainability, access to services, facilities, employment opportunities,
as far as
within all of the district, the wider district.
It's out with the urban boundary, but is adjacent to that.
Out with, but adjacent to. And just to be clear, there's no suggestion that there's been any material change of circumstances to that position since this plan was withdrawn.
I'm not aware of any.
Right, so that's the big picture, if you like. But starting to zoom in then on more of the micro issues, let's start with the position of the Highways Authority, who have considered this topic in their statement of common ground with us at 9.2a. I think it's 9.2 little a is a statement of common ground with the Highways Authority, Essex.
I do have that, yes.
Thank you very much. Now, if you turn in it to section 3, which is existing situation, that's on page 5.
I have that, yes.
And then it starts to go through some of the numbers that I'll be coming back to, so I don't want to get too lost in the numbers yet. But at 3.18 on page 7, we're told that it's an agreed position that the site provides access to a range of services and facilities within walking distances as identified above.
Yes, it does say that.
And then at 3.19 on page 9. Now,
yes.
Don't get me wrong. I think I appreciate that you don't share you share some, but not all, I think, of the views that are set out here. You certainly don't agree with the overall conclusion. So I'm not asking you to agree with it. I'm asking you to note what the Highways Authority thinks, who have looked at it. They agree at 3.19 the site's located within acceptable walking and cycling distances of a range of things: public transport nodes, employment, education, retail, health services.
They do.
They agree at 3.21 that access to a range of services and facilities by non-car modes is possible and appropriate in the following ways, and this sets out what those ways are.
That's correct. That's what they're saying.
And then overall at 3.22, they agree that in combination, these measures allow for sustainable travel for residents of the site, and that the opportunities for sustainable travel have been maximised proportionate to the scale of the settlement.
Development.
Oh, I read that wrong. So sorry. Development. Sorry. Thank you. And then finally, they agree at 8.2 on page 16. 8.2 on page 16, they agree that the site location is sustainable, being accessible by non-car modes of transport, and that a range of local facilities, services, transport interchanges can be reached by walking, cycling and public transport. They also agree a load of other things, but I won't go through it. That's their position.
Yeah.
You don't share it. We'll come on to your view. But just to be clear, nothing material, this was only October 23, so I think this is a silly question maybe, but nothing material's changed since the Highways Authority expressed their view, other than you've taken a different view.
In fact, the different view was prior to that. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we've got Basildon's location, the settlement hierarchy. We've got the view of Essex as the Highways Authority. And then we've also got the consideration of this potential reason for refusal by your own client professional officers. That's in core document 3.3. Turn that up.
Oh, yeah.
Core document 3.3 is an update report to committee from June of this year, I think, or a planning report, a report to committee of June of this year. And it's not paginated, but the third PDF page, just above the paragraph that starts 1.15, there's a heading that is draft reason for refusal, unsustainable location.
Yes, I have that.
And then it sets out what the draft reason for refusal is, which we can pass over, because then there's another bit over the page that's headed commentary.
Yes.
So commentary at 1.16 and 1.17 were told by officers that whilst it's recognised that pedestrian access to the application site could be improved, and that to access Basildon town centre and local schools, crossings over the A127 will need to be utilised. The Highway Authority have not raised an objection on accessibility grounds. They consider there are opportunities to utilise alternative modes of travel in addition to the car. Having regard to its edge of settlement location, with opportunities to enhance sustainable transport, cycleways, footpaths, bus services, etc., and the relative close proximity, 1 to 1.5 miles distance from local shops and services, the site would be considered within a sustainable location. In light of this, it's considered that the reason for refusal of the proposals on grounds that the sites within an unsustainable location could not be sustained.
That's what it says, yes.
So we've got the Highways Authority, we've got the view of the committee, sorry, not the committee, gosh, what am I saying? Not the Highways Authority, the view of officers who are advising the committee on the merits of this potential reason for refusal, that it was an unsustainable reason for refusal. And again, since this report in June of 23, there's been no material, it's not like guidance has changed or there's been some sort of relevant change on the ground that would render these conclusions out of date or whatever. It's just that you've come along and given a different opinion.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I should, yeah, the obvious point is that the position of the councillors and committee hasn't changed either.
No, it hasn't changed either. No, members decided to go along with the reason for refusal, notwithstanding that advice from the Highways Authority and from their professional officers. Okay, so, and here we are. Now, you consider this issue, it's part of your planning assessment, if you like, in your proof of evidence, and it's in your or I think in particular, yes, it's your section 3, your proof. And just again to sort of cut a long story short, no objection in respect of cycling. Indeed, you told us yesterday that the cycling accessibility by bike was typical for an urban location.
Yeah, edge of urban location, yes.
So that's that. Public transport, essentially, your position at the time of the proof is that it could be achievable. I'm paraphrasing. It could be made acceptable, subject to more information on what exactly is being proposed vis-a-vis this bus service. That at the time you wrote your proof, you didn't have all the info on.
That's correct.
Now, of course, happily, the inspector's got the draft 106, which again we don't need to go into it particularly today, because we're coming back to it next week. But the draft 106 bus contribution over £1 million for the Highways Authority to manage and procure a better bus service to improve its frequency and accessibility of the bus service, which you're aware of. I'm not asking about the detail of it, but you're now aware of it. And when it comes to what that bus service is actually going to do, we've now got the statement of common ground that I've just shown you at 9.2a, the statement of common ground with Essex. If you just turn back to that for a moment. On page, if you turn to page 13, there's a heading on page 13 about halfway down, sustainable transport, passenger transport.
Yes, I have that. Good.
Now, there's the heads of terms as to what Essex are going to implement we're told at 7.7, and then there's a whole load of bullet points that explain what's in mind. New service between Billericay Station and Basildon Hospital with a number of stops. We won't go through them all. There's of course a route plan which is appended to this. And just to cut a long story short, I think you're happy with the route plan.
I'm happy with the route. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where it's going. In terms of when it's operating, Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. hourly, which compared to the level of provision that there is at the moment, which as I understand it's not very frequent, it's a very significant upgrade.
A substantial, I mean, it's a substantial improvement because the existing public transport is virtually non-existent.
So what's proposed constitutes, in your view, a substantial improvement over the status quo?
Yes, from a very poor base.
Hourly service, including in rush hour, peak hour for people who would be wanting to access employment either in Billericay or perhaps more likely in Basildon. So it's going to be a service that people might actually use, in that it's going to be regular and it's going to stop at the places it should stop at, and it's going to be all day long.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I see it's in terms of the timing. Yeah, frequency, yes. Regular hourly is as good as you would expect. 7 a.m. morning start, yes. 7 p.m.
Is that too early?
It's a bit too early,
right? Okay.
As you can expect, it doesn't allow any access to leisure activities in the evening. Okay. It doesn't allow people to, if they have travelled by bus, to work, to work a little bit beyond 7 o'clock, okay, which is not that unusual. So I would say it's a bit light in the
okay. Well,
there's also there is no Sunday service.
No,
I realise around here Sunday services are very poor, but ideally you provide a Sunday service as well.
So what we've got is a package that you, I think, would like to see 7 days a week until sometime at night. But what Essex have determined is an appropriate and acceptable burden for a scheme like ours to be bearing. So 7 to 7 every hour, 6 days a week. We're told at 7.8 that the final service will be procured and tendered by Essex Passenger Transport, which is the standard approach.
Yes.
So it's the county council essentially who will then go on, if permission's granted, and if thereafter the money is paid under the 106 in order to make all of this happen, Essex will then go out, they'll procure the operator.
Yeah, they will seek an operator. I think the two principal service operators here are Nibs and First.
Yeah.
We don't know how successful a procurement will be. And
no,
I do have a concern that, to me, for this, if this site is developed in contemplation, a bus service is it absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Of the very least of what's being proposed here.
Yeah.
But we don't know whether that procurement will be successful. We've got no indication from an operator that they'll be interested in running it.
Yeah. Do you see what's said at 7.8 about this? It's the standard approach. Yeah. We're at the stage of lodging a planning application. We've not got planning permission yet, obviously. We've been trying. And as part of that, we're proposing to make a commitment through the 106 of over £1 million to make this happen. It's not us who can deliver that, it's Essex, and indeed then the operators who Essex deal with. The standard approach is that you get your planning consent or not. If you don't get your planning consent, that's it. If you get your planning consent, at that stage, ECC Passenger Transport enter into their procuring and tendering exercise with operators. Correct?
I fully accept it's their standard approach.
Yeah.
I will question, my question here is that the public transport accessibility of this site is so poor at the at present, that I would prefer to see greater certainty in delivery. Certainty not just in terms of who will provide it, but also duration. At the moment, it also identifies it as being a 5-year pump priming period. We have to ask the question: what happens after 5 years if an operator decides not to? Are we going to be left with a development of 269 houses with no viable bus service?
You must have come across situations in your experience where a development comes forward that is able to provide a bus service, improvements to a bus service for a particular period of time, after which the hope, the expectation is that because, let me just finish, because the service has become more viable, more usable, more acceptable. I mean, at the moment, as you say, it's not in your view, but this is going to be a substantially improved service that goes to where it needs to go to. People might actually use it to the point that it becomes a viable service. I mean, you must understand that a scheme like ours can only lawfully fund so much.
Yeah, I do understand that. And that is why I have a concern about the public transport, because this is not a normal site in the sense of it has some access to public transport. It has virtually no easy access to public transport as it exists. And that is the problem I have with it. I would very much, to me, it is so, the need for public transport, for this quality of service, as a minimum, is so fundamentally important that I'd like to see, I would want to see as much assurance as is possible that this is going to be a permanent service and a viable service.
And we never get it.
We don't have anything even, there doesn't seem to be any approach to an operator to say, would you be interested? No commitment. Would you be even interested? Is this something you'd like to?
I don't know what Essex
it doesn't take a lot. I mean, in my experience, it is very common for a site like this, for developers to approach the bus operators and say, and at least to give some sort of it's not a commitment because it's not legally binding, but some encouragement that actually it's achievable. And that is the problem I have here.
Well, it's a problem with respect that's not borne out by the position of Essex. They are the ones who, if we've agreed, are responsible for actually doing all of this. It's going to be them, not us, who approach us, whichever operators they see fit, and to procure and tender this service. And the standard approach that they have set out, no, I think you agree is the standard approach, is for that to happen post, not pre-planning consent being issued.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's that. And assuming that that is correct, that this is, so far as bus travel goes, I'm just talking about buses at the moment.
Yes.
So far as bus travel goes, this is a site which, quote, is or can be made sustainable within the meaning of 105. You say it isn't at the moment, but you accept it can be made that.
It can be made sustainable in terms of public transport. Yes.
Which means that, subject to the 106 obligations, and obviously we don't know what the inspector's going to make of any of that, that's all for next week, that we can meet the tests at 105 for both cycling and public transport. Yeah. Obviously, the bus will then connect to trains and stuff as well.
Yes, I don't think we need to worry about things.
So far as 105 goes, which is we've agreed is the critical test in national policy, subject to the 106 discussion next week, we agreed that we are capable of meeting the relevant tests in respect of cycling and public transport.
We agree subject to the caveats I've already said, and I don't need to repeat them. So.
Okay. All right. There's no requirement, is there, in policy to identify an operator of a bus service at the stage of a planning application?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's buses and cycling. So that leaves us with walking then. Now, let's go to the Statement of Common Ground with the Highways Authority again. That's called document 9.2a. You append some of the guidance, some of it's a bit long in the tooth nowadays, to relevant walking distances and that kind of thing. And you append some of it to your proof, but it's summarised on from page 5 to 6 of the Statement of Common Ground, particularly page 6 actually. On page 6 of the Statement of Common Ground at 3.13, there's a reference to the document providing for journeys on foot, which is one of the things you append, that suggests acceptable walking distances of between 500 metres, 6 minutes desirable, and 2 kilometres, 25 minutes preferred maximum for commuting and journeys to school. Yes. And again, you've got the extract from that in your evidence.
There's more detail in my
more detail in your evidence. And then at 3.14, Manual for Streets quotes the now withdrawn PPG 13, I think it might have been PPS 13 anyway, as suggesting that walking offers the greatest potential to replace short car trips, particularly for those under 2 kilometres.
Yes, that's what it says.
Whilst PPG 13 was replaced by the framework, unfortunately, perhaps replacement guidance on maximum walking distances is set out in the MPPF.
Yes.
So a starting point for us is that although we have to use these, we have to, just because we've got to use something, use guidance documents that stretch back in the first case, the CIHT document to, is it the year 2000? Just get the dates right for a moment. Yeah, the first one's 2000 and the second one's Manual for Streets, which is 2007.
Yes, 2007.
There is no current or national policy stipulation so far as acceptable walking times for things like job, school, shops, whatever.
Yeah, that's correct. You'd say the same for even institutes like CIHT. There's no current.
There's guidance. No current. So we're in the realms. We use these obviously, and we're not suggesting they're irrelevant for one moment, but we are now in the realms, aren't we, of professional judgment?
We are.
Yeah. Okay. Nonetheless, having said that, well, I'll ask you about your judgments. So let's have a look at your proof of evidence in respect of walking. You've set out your table 1, which is on your page 5.
Let me just.
Yep. Thank you. Have you got that? Sorry, table 1, page 5, Mr. Hodges?
Yeah, I'm just getting that.
No problem.
Yep. No, I have it.
Good. Now, we've got number of schools, preschool, and then 3 primary schools, and then a number of community facilities, community hall, worship, dentist, GP, surgery, etc., and then some shops, public open spaces, employment areas, and with each one, you've done walking distances, you've done a range. So I think that depends on where in the site you're starting
That's
from.
Correct. That's in our Statement of Common Ground.
Yeah,
the location.
Sure. So that's what that's about. And then you've given some assessments and in particular some comments at the end about whether you need to cross the footbridge or not.
Correct.
Now, if we are to take, and I would accept that almost all of them, let's have a look. Everything except the leap within the site falls without outside what the IHT guidance from 2000 considered the desirable range of 500 meters, a 500-meter walk. But the IHT guidance also, as you've indicated in your, by the next column along, sets out what it refers to as preferred maximums.
Potential maximum, yeah.
It calls them preferred maximum.
Yeah.
You call them potential maximums,
yes, okay.
But the IHT call them preferred maximums.
Yes. I was referring not just to the one document, but to the various guidance as a range.
Yeah. I mean, the Manual for Streets suggests that walking offers the greatest potential to replace short car trips, particularly for those trips under 2 kilometres. And the IHT guidance suggests that preferred maximums are up to 2 kilometres, same thing. So if we're in the business of thinking about preferred maximums as being anything up to 2 kilometres, it's, well, I mean, again, the inspector can read this itself. There's no point going through each one. My
understanding is that these are, the figures are agreed. So
I think you're largely right. But it'd be fair to say that there's not everything. No, of course. So take, for example, the sporting village. Just as an example, as a very clear example, where the walking distances to get to the sporting village, that's at the bottom of the community facilities. That's too far to meet what the IHT suggests would be a preferred maximum walk.
And I would stress on the table, and also the statement of common ground that we did, these are of the types of facilities that are listed, these are the closest. Now, I fully recognise that in even so on behalf of yourselves, sorry, I've forgotten what is his name. It's just gone blank. That there are other facilities, but they're further away.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, of course. There's all sorts further away. Yeah, and I mean, it's in Basildon, so there's everything, isn't there? But so far as the things that we've listed here, it's possible to get to within preferred maximum walking distances, preschool, primary school, community hall. It's possible to get to the dentist. The nearest GP surgery is, by the look of it, too far, just outside. The library will be, by the look of it, at the upper limit for some residents and outside the upper limit for others, because it's 2,000 to 2,375, depending on where you happen to live. But shops at the Willow Field, where you've got your laundress, your hairdresser, and at the moment a vacant shop, they're well within walking distance, and some other stuff is as well, so far as shops go.
I think I agree that these are within preferred maximums.
Yeah, no, I know.
I do not believe,
you don't.
That means for the people who do it are people who are particularly keen on walking, who are particularly fit. It will not include, the majority, a large majority of residents who will not choose to walk that distance.
That's a jump. I think I accept that. Well, except we can agree that not everyone is going to make all of these walks.
We've heard.
Hang on, I'm just asking a question.
I apologise.
Not at all. I accept that not everyone's going to make these walks. Of course, they won't. But as you said yesterday, I think your point was yesterday, it wouldn't be, you thought, that when you're crossing the overbridge, an easily accessible route for all members of the community, you said.
Yes.
But it will be for some.
For some, yes.
And so, and indeed for those some, I don't know how many, will end up using the opportunities to walk to different things. They'll be able to walk to, not everything. I'm not suggesting they won't be able to walk to, within a preferred maximum distance, the sports village, for example, whatever. But they'll be able to walk to a range of different things, including a community hall, dentists, schools, and some shops, a play area and public open space, and indeed an employment area too, which is the Hamels IE. I don't know what IE stands for, you probably do. Anyway, there's an employment area too that's well within the relevant distances.
Yes, I mean, I think it's very important that we look at the acceptable and desirable walking distances as being particularly important.
Yeah.
For example, I mean, I put a list of certain references and standards in my proof, which you can read. I think we also need to, for example, document, there's a sustainability appraisal prepared for the proposed plan, publication draft plan.
Yeah.
That was prepared by Ringway Jacobs, that's CD 818. And if you look on page 14 of that, they have a standard of an acceptable walking distance is 1 kilometre. And they're referring to Department for Transport guidance. But the point, so there are a number, the aim here is to encourage encourage walking
Totally.
as the preferred. Yes. So
Totally.
it's not a matter of having it. Yes, a few people in the community will choose to walk that far because they're capable of doing it. And the fact is, people walk the Pennine Way, 275 miles. Is it convenient to walk?
No, come on, Mr. Hodges. Let's
you've
be realistic.
You've got to be realistic. Exactly.
But
You've got to be realistic.
We're not
How
talking
many
about
people
hundreds
are going
of
to choose
miles.
to walk?
He's not answering the question. Come on. We're talking about preferred maxima in the. I'm asking you
Mr.
about.
Simons, just let
Sorry.
Mr. Hodges.
All right.
So
Do answer.
The point is, as you said, we have to be realistic.
Good.
We have to be realistic as to what proportion of the community and how inclusive and how supportive walking is when you have to walk close to 2 kilometers to basic community facilities, including the primary school. Primary school is over 1 kilometer and requires crossing over a bridge and walking next to the A127.
But the primary school is well within what's called a preferred maximum walking distance by the IHT. And what's encouraged by Manual for Streets in terms of the greatest potential to replace short car trips under 2 kilometers.
The Manual for Streets is not encouraging walking. It's just identifying that routes up to 2 kilometers can be the maximum potential for shifting some people from car to pedestrian.
It says they offer the greatest.
What we have here in the primary school is that it's 1,100 meters minimum distance from the closest part of the site.
We do.
That is beyond any guidance, thresholds, standards, call them what you will, for what are desirable or comfortable walking distances. We've already heard from members of the community who live in Steepleview that they don't walk because it's not convenient.
Yeah.
This site is going to be further from facilities than Steepleview residents live. It's going to be less convenient.
It's very difficult to. You're answering a lot of different questions at the moment that I've not asked you. I'd just like to pin you right back to what I said, and then we'll go through all the things that you've said. Not all of them, because some of them relate to things that are way off base from what this inquiry is actually about. We've been over what the guidance says. We've been over what preferred maximum means. We've been over what Manual for Streets identifies will offer the greatest potential to replace short car trips. We've been over the fact that lots of the facilities that you identify in your table are within those preferred maximum distances, and some are outside them as well. We've been over all of that, and we've been over the fact that some of the people who live in this scheme, when it comes forward, will choose to walk, and some of them won't. Right?
Potentially. We don't know.
We don't know, but some of them will, some of them won't. And for those that do, they've got access within preferred maximum distances to all sorts of things.
Yes, and some of them who do choose may choose to do it occasionally.
They may. No idea. But the point is that when those people do come to access services and facilities in the area, if planning permission is granted for our scheme, they're thinking about how to get to Hemmel's employment area or whatever it is that they're planning to get to. Some may walk, some may cycle, some may get the new bus service, and some may drive. But these are people who will have a genuine choice of modes.
There will be a choice of modes. How practical that choice of modes and how genuine it is debatable. And I would say that having facilities that are at or beyond potential maximums is a very limited choice.
You're always going to have facilities. Are you saying that you need to have all facilities within the preferred maximum?
No, but the point is it's demonstrating that this location is not easily accessible by walking to facilities and services. That is a fact.
Let's just take a step back. Do you remember that the council's own analysis, we've been through all the numbers, demonstrates that there's under 10,000 homes that can be delivered in urban locations. And so the rest of it has to be met. The rest of their needs are going to have to be met in what is currently Greenbelt land. And we've asked, you remember where we looked at for all of that. And we've been over the potential locations where Greenbelt sites may or may not come forward. And we know, don't we, that Basildon, if they're going to come forward anywhere, on the edge of Basildon is by far the preferable place for that to happen because of the range of services and facilities accessible within settlement.
If you're going to travel by car, you're in by driving relative close proximity for a very wide range of facilities and services in Basildon.
But what you're suggesting, the approach of what you're suggesting, which is to say that everything's got to be within walking distance, or it, well, I don't know what you're saying. You can't go forward.
I'm not saying that everything needs to be in walking distance. What I'm saying is that guidance is strongly encouraging us to build houses and locations where you can only access a reasonable range of services and facilities. That's my interpretation of policy.
Okay, and so then the question for the inspector is, I think, given what's called at 110A of the framework, the type of development and its location, have appropriate opportunities to promote sustainable transport modes been taken up?
I think that's fair.
Okay. We agree there'll be a choice of modes for the people who move into these homes if permission's granted. You accept that there'll be a choice so far as car, public transport and cycling goes. I think you also accept there'll be a choice to walk, but you quibble on whether it will be a fully genuine choice to walk for some people.
I think, yeah.
Is that right? Is that a fair summary?
I'd express it as the quality of that choice. Is it a good choice, or is it, how genuine
is it?
Is that choice?
Okay.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
All righty. In the end, then, I think we've at least nailed down what the issue is that you're asking the inspector to refuse the scheme on the basis of, and she'll reach her own view. Fine, thank you very much. Okay. Now, the overall balance then, to round everything off, not much to ask you about here because it's sort of repetitious of all the things that we've been over already. As of your proof of evidence, when you wrote that,
yes,
your position was, and you sort of explained it at times in your evidence in chief yesterday, your position was is that even assuming that you're right on everything, so assuming, i.e., that you just you adopt the position of Mr. Reynolds on Greenbelt matters,
yes,
and that he's right on it all, as it were. You were accepting his evidence wholesale, which you're perfectly entitled to do because you're relying on him, and also assuming that you're right on everything to do so far as the things that you give evidence on. Then at 6.3 of your proof, you think at that stage finally balanced.
Correct.
So that was the stage, that was the position when you wrote your proof. That's 6.3 of your proof on page 14. Just to understand what that means, I'm not I don't sort of overread it. Finally balanced, I understand as something in the order of 50-50 on your analysis of the case.
I'm not sure the probability is
no, not
correct.
Probability. It's not probability. It's a balance. It's benefits against harms.
Yeah. Benefits and harms are reasonably balanced. Yes, they're close. 50-50 if you wish.
So it's not your position when you produced your proof of evidence. It wasn't your position that either the harms outweighed the benefits or the benefits outweighed the harms. They were in equipoise, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, given that
is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say precisely balanced because always there's a degree, there's a grey area in terms of how much weight and how significant the impacts are.
Okay.
So there's a degree of.
Well, let me just ask you then: is there at the time that you wrote your evidence, was it your position that the harms outweighed the benefits or not?
I consider them close to each other. Yeah,
is that correct then? Neither one. I mean, could you just answer?
Neither one. It's not clear that one is significantly, or the benefits are significantly outweighing the harm.
Forget about significantly. Yeah. Just is it your view or not that that the benefits outweigh the harm, or the harms?
I think they're broadly comparable.
Broadly comparable. All right.
That
so
probably is the best way of putting it.
Right. Okay. That was your position as at the time of your proof. Now, since your proof, you've given your oral evidence on locational sustainability. However, your evidence on locational sustainability was not, your proof wasn't informed, it's not a criticism, it's a fact, was not informed by the statement of common ground on the bus service. Because
the statement of common ground on the bus service wasn't there. There was, but what was there was an indication of a commitment by the now appellants, as stated in the committee report, that there will be support for and the council seeking contribution to. So I was expecting there to be a bus service, but I had question marks about it.
Yeah, but we now know we've been over your question marks, but you agree, though, I think, that the bus service which is envisaged in the statement of common ground on transport would constitute a substantial improvement. That was your phrase.
Yes, substantial improvement compared to almost nothing.
Well, yeah, but it's not a substantial.
I think I said a very low base level of public transport.
Yeah, but
so
also
it's all contextual.
I know that, but I think we're sort of dancing on the head of a pin here. I know you've said all of that, but you said that subject to that service coming forward, your quibbles on the bus service would fall away, as it were, if that bus service is delivered in accordance with what? Hang on,
Apologize.
That's all right. If the bus service comes forward, we've been over this obviously, as envisaged by the statement of common ground and the Essex and the standard approach and all that stuff, and it's hourly, and it's 6 days a week, and it's 7 to 7, and it's all that stuff, then no objection from you, Mr. Harger, so far as buses are concerned.
As far as buses are concerned, no, provided they could be, we can have an assurance that it's not 5 years, it's permanent.
Well,
that's quite important.
But okay, putting that aside, either way, you've got more information now on the nature of that benefit than you did at the time that you put together your proof of evidence, right?
A little bit more information, yes.
A little bit more.
Not much more, because there was quite a lot of that was still around.
Fine. Okay, but anyway,
not much more.
The route, the timings, and all that stuff doesn't make any difference then to your assessment of the overall balance in the case. Doesn't tilt your funny balance case.
I had assumed that when I wrote this proof that if a bus service was to be provided, it was going to be regular and would be connecting key locations. It's not fundamentally different from what I would have expected.
Yeah, it's not an assumption you express in your proof. At 6.8, you say that there's no confirmation on frequency, on route, on destinations, and all that stuff.
It's still not confirmed. It's identified as desired, and that's the basis on which the county council will seek to procure.
Okay,
but it's not confirmed because they say very clearly that it will be subject to that procurement process.
We've got lots of new information, but it's not information that makes a difference. Is your position?
Yeah, it doesn't make much. Not a significant difference.
Not a significant. It does make a difference, but not much.
Not much.
Right. Okay. So we've got more information now about buses. It's a good thing so far as you're concerned. Doesn't go the full way that you'd like it to see, guaranteed in perpetuity or whatever. But it makes a difference.
The timing we've talked about as well.
You've got to not talk over.
Sorry, yeah, you've given your answer. We've got more information. It makes a difference, but it doesn't make a significant difference. You say that's your evidence.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's that. And you don't give any weight at all, positive weight, to the benefits of securing a new bus service.
Yeah, I've already covered that in terms of
in terms of your planning analysis in section 6.
No, because I deal with the accessibility. I'm still very concerned about the overall accessibility by active transport modes is very poor.
I know that. Please just answer the question.
It's subsumed within that.
It's subsumed within what you end up deciding as a negative. So you give significant weight against the scheme for, among other things, a substantial improvement to the bus services.
No, I mean, if we're talking about the bus services for the site, no, there's a difference here because there is a positive. I mean, I need to say very
break it down.
There is a positive associated with if there is a bus service. I feel that as far as the site is concerned, because I consider it essential, I would treat that as neutral. However, and I would you haven't asked me, but I'm going to concede and accept that if you provide that bus service, it will improve bus services in Steeple View.
Right.
That is a positive.
Good.
And I know, and
fair enough. Thank you very much. So that's a positive that's not in your proof.
Yeah.
So there's a positive factor, if you like, which is the sort of the wider benefits associated with the bus service. Sorry, let me just. Which we agree is a positive. You've got more information about it now, obviously, than you had at the time that you produced your proof. It's a positive. Is it how much of a positive is it?
I'd say it's limited. I mean,
a limited positive for the people who say they have to drive because there's a terrible bus service. Having an hourly bus service 6 days a week.
Bus service plus a few school-related services down High Road.
Only limited, really, given all the importance you've set out.
I say there is currently an hourly service through Steeple View. This would improve that service. I'm not quite sure how the timing would work and so on.
So limited weight as a positive, something is that that's your evidence?
Yes, I think that's fair.
You think that's fine? Yeah. All right then. Well, that's okay, but not enough to tilt the balance one way or the other. And then there was the evidence yesterday of Mr. Reynolds. And this is the thing that you said you were going to go away and think about overnight to decide whether or not you still supported the council's case. And it turns out that you do, which is obviously good news for the council, I'm sure. When you wrote your proof of evidence, because you rely on Mr. Reynolds for Greenbelt stuff, openness purposes, that's why I've not asked you any questions, because I've asked all the questions to him. But was it your understanding that he'd conducted a site-specific Greenbelt assessment of openness and purposes?
It's my understanding that the LVIA that he undertook was site-specific, and it says so. I understand that, and that his proof would reflect that.
Greenbelt. I know that he did a landscape review. I'm asking about, so far as Greenbelt, let me try and ask a specific question, because so far as the assessment of impacts on Greenbelt openness and the 5 Greenbelt purposes, which, as I understand it, is the case that the council is actually trying to make, as I understand it, I might be wrong. So far as the assessment of Greenbelt openness and Greenbelt purposes, was it your understanding that the evidence you rely on from Mr. Reynolds was site-specific?
Yes.
Sorry, just one moment. Thank you. We now know that the evidence in section 6 of his proof on purposes and section 7 of his proof on openness of the Greenbelt related not to the application site, but to a wider area.
That's what I understand was agreed.
So the basis upon which you prepared your balance in your proof was, and this is not a criticism, it isn't, because things change over the course of inquiries, but we need to just be clear about this. The basis upon which you struck your planning balance in section 6 was wrong, as it turns out.
In that sense, yes.
In seeking to strike that balance now, you are not informed by evidence that is site-specific in relation to, from Mr. Reynolds, in relation to the purposes or openness of the Greenbelt.
My understanding from the evidence that was given by Mr. Reynolds yesterday, rather than what was written in his proof, was that he still identified that the site had adverse impacts on the wider Greenbelt context. It wasn't just localized, but went beyond that. That is my understanding.
That was your understanding of what he said.
And on that basis, it is, the balance that I undertook is still accurate.
Can I ask you? It's obviously very difficult, because I don't want to sort of shadow. I'm not going to cross-examine you about what I cross-examined him about. The inspector's got his own note. So let me ask you it in this way. This is an if question. It's got to be an if question, because because I don't want us to put you on the spot in terms of trying to understand what was said by him and all of that.
Yes.
So if it is right that Mr. Reynolds agreed that the impacts, such as they'd be on the Greenbelt, would be limited to the site itself, and that the remaining areas, there wouldn't be wider impacts on the Greenbelt, so it'd be localized in that respect. That would have the effect, as I understand what you're saying, of changing your position.
It would still be a substantial.
Oh, I know that. That's in policy, but I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about your overall balance.
Yes, overall, but it would shift it slightly in favour of the approval of the scheme. The benefits would be greater than.
You do a lot of, and I understand that, but how slightly? I mean, I understand that you're doing this sort of finely balanced thing, and you're talking about grey areas and nuance and everything slightly up and down, and you're being cagey, maybe understandably, about actually expressing a firm view on whether benefits outweigh harms or not, though I've asked you a few times. At the moment, your view is that benefits and harms are essentially equal. Yes.
What I would say is that there may be a slight excess is the wrong word.
Right.
The benefits may be slightly greater than the disbenefits, than the harm.
Do you think the benefits are greater than the harms now?
No, slightly is what I just said.
Slightly.
In coming to the balance, there are quite a wide range. Clearly, there's still significant harm to the greenbelt. You know, hypothetically, they'll be localized.
That's on the if. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because you put
that was the way I put the question
yes,
to you. That's fair enough. Yeah.
There are still, you know, the benefit. I mean, it's very quickly running through what the benefits.
Don't go through all of them. No. I just because it will just take too long. I just want your overall view.
Because there are so many of them. There are a number of factors in support and a number of factors against.
We know that.
I would still consider that there's a, you know, hypothetically, a slight favour in approval of the scheme, a slight balance for the benefits.
Okay.
But whether I don't really see that is sufficient to be clearly.
Right.
Which are, you know, without doubt, obviously, you know, which is the planning test in NPF.
Fair enough. So where we get to, I think, at the end of all of that is, if it is right that Mr. Reynolds agreed that, quote, and I'm reading from one of the Greenbelt assessments that he did agree, so that's why we'll put this all in closings, it's not for you. If it's right that he agreed that the remaining Greenbelt in this location will continue to function as currently in its purposes, your analysis then of the case for the inspector is that the benefits outweigh the harms.
Slightly.
I know, I was about to say that, don't worry. The benefits outweigh the harms to a degree that you consider to be slight.
Yes. So
it goes from being a 50-50 case to being a, again, just to help me understand what you mean by slightly, because I am struggling a bit, to something like a 51-49 case or whatever. It's a marginal, benefits outweigh harms to a slight degree, and benefits outweigh the harms, but you don't consider that to be enough to be a benefits clearly outweighing the harms.
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah, and I should explain why I say it's not clearly, because that's quite an important point, is that we're not quantifying all these benefits. They're not like a rigid arithmetic method of adding them up and then saying, you know, therefore that is, you know, a definitive score in support and a score against.
No.
These are all kind of, they're judgment based.
Sure.
They're soft assessments.
Well,
and on that basis, it's not clearly.
Right. But in the end, really, someone's got, I mean, that's,
a decision
it can't just not be clearly because we've all got to reach judgments on it. I mean, I appreciate it's not a mathematical exercise, but in the end, there are cases, aren't there? And indeed, they've happened in Basildon, and we've seen one or two of them this morning, where inspectors have found that the benefits associated with delivering much needed market and affordable homes on what is now greenfield, greenbelt sites are big enough that they clearly outweigh the harms, including the substantial weight that must be given to any greenbelt harm.
Yes, there have been decisions. Yeah.
And so on your analysis of the case, on my hypothetical, your analysis is that yes, the benefits do outweigh the harms, but you don't think that the nature of that outweighing is clear enough for you to pass the test, as it were.
Yes.
All righty. We're getting down to these terribly fine margins, aren't we, Mr. Hargest? Thank you very much. Got no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of things from me. I'd be pleased to hear most of it's been covered. Yesterday you spoke, and again you've revisited it this morning, about the primacy of the development plan and the position, how sites should be coming forward as part of that process, and you've been through it with Mr. Simons in some detail as why that's not the case here. But what I didn't get from you is what your view is then in terms of what should be happening in a situation like this then, where there is no development plan coming forward.
It's a little bit hypothetical in the sense of, obviously I have no control. It's a little bit hypothetical because obviously I'm not involved, you know, I'm not a member of the planning authorities to say how they should act.
No, it's not hypothetical, because it's a situation that the appeal wouldn't be here if they weren't in that position, would they? I assume that they would not be in this position. So in your view then, you're saying that the local plan is the correct place for this sort of thing to be happening. We haven't got a local plan here that's progressing. So what's the solution then in terms of addressing housing need?
I think, well, I suppose in the first case, I would say that the local plan has to be made the very highest priority, so it could be as forthcoming as quickly as possible, but that doesn't really answer your question, I believe. It may be possible that through a form of supplementary guidance, it's difficult, because really the NPF is really saying that has to be through, greenbelt boundaries can only be made through the development plan. So there isn't really an option about supplementary guidance. That forces down to a very unsatisfactory route of decisions through appeal. Or approvals, of course. It doesn't have to be refusals. Applications are made and determined accordingly. It clearly is a very difficult position.
Okay, and then the balance in terms of weight that you would attach to, obviously you've got the council's view that the site isn't in a sustainable location, and Essex County Council as a highway authority agreeing a statement of common ground saying it is. So weight to be attached to that statement.
I would actually put significantly less weight on what the county council is saying, because they are actually saying, for example, sites is in sustainable walking distance, contrary to their own guidance in the Essex Design Guide. And it seems to me that in getting that statement of common ground, the transport planners actually haven't considered their own guidance. And that's the County Council transport planners. And they will also be members of, many will be members of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transport. The guidance doesn't reflect the preferred and recommended distances that are produced by that organisation. So it's not, so in summary, because they don't seem to follow the guidance that I would expect from professional transport planners, that I would put less weight on it.
Okay. And then the final thing I just need to revisit, because I'm not clear as to, or I'm clear what you've said today, but I think you've said something slightly different in your proof. So I just need to be sure that I've written down what you're saying is correct. So this is covered in the officer's report, and it's the issue of the Kennel Lane appeal and the weight to be attached to that evidence base. Right. I think you've said today that you would attach weight to the evidence base. I think your proof says something different.
Don't recall what the proof says. I would attach weight to the evidence base for the publication draft local plan. It is, in the same way as identified in the Kennel Lane decision.
Okay, I think it's let's get the correct reference for your proof. It's 5.1.31.
Sorry, I thought you said in my evidence.
Sorry, yeah, that's the committee reference, and then you've in your proof of evidence.
This is my paragraph 522.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, what I'm referring to there is not so much the weight to be given to the evidence base per se, but what that evidence base says about this appeal site.
That's what I thought you meant. So where you've said, contrary to what the officer has said, that's not, yes. not correct then, is it?
Yeah, I may have missed, that may have not been as clear, but certainly
So if you go back to the statement at 412 in the report to committee, and it's the first committee report, I think.
yes, that's 3.1. 12.
It's under the heading of the emerging local plan.
Yes,
the
yes.
particular paragraph is dealing with the evidence base and how that evidence base was addressed in the Kennel Lane appeal decision.
I think the problem here is probably my misreading of para 412.
Right.
In that I'd interpret it being site specific,
yeah,
rather than the generic weight that's attached to the evidence base.
Okay.
I do attach weight to the evidence base, but in terms of this site, I do not, because of what it says, I do not consider it weighs heavily in favour of this appeal proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it possible that that last answer could be repeated because it just dropped a bit.
So I agree that the evidence base for the preparation of the publication draft local plan does carry weight, significant weight. But because of what that evidence says about this appeal site, I do not consider that it weighs heavily in favour of this proposal.
Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Anything from the Rule 6 party? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, can you give me any ideas of alternative travel methods with regards to, say, parents, mother, father, taking their children to school?
I mean, how might they take children to school, apart from walking or driving? I mean,
yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
I mean, in theory, well, in terms of access to school, the existing bus network does not assist because of the length of distance to walk. In fact, there'll be a significant walk even getting to Mill House from the bus route. So that's not a practical, as things are at the moment. And I don't think that the proposed bus route in terms of will actually assist with that either. So I think there will be no, it will not improve access, taking kids to school. There's no difference in terms of walking because it's still a fixed distance. And obviously that then leaves cycling, which is possible, but I suspect will not be very attractive. Maybe it's attractive to secondary school children, but you've still got the issue of having to walk your bike over the overbridge and so on, or take a significant detour. So in terms of access to school, there's not a lot of practice, unless you're going to walk quite a significant difference, you're more or less forced to drive.
Can I ask what your opinions are on specifically the overpass, on how it will affect people with mobility needs, specifically going to as far as what a mother or father would do with a pushchair and two children, how they would negotiate that bridge. What are your opinions on that?
Well, I mean, there are steps. So with a buggy, you can push up. It's not particularly convenient. And I think if you're dealing with a child with a buggy and other children, they're going to be relatively young, so it's quite a long distance. But I think probably that is best dealt with on the site visit to actually observe, what the condition of that route is. I mean, I would actually be more concerned as a parent if I was walking along that part of footpath, the shared footpath adjacent to the A127, because basically it's a curb between that and 2 lanes of mostly fast-moving traffic, not at peak hour. That, and you look at the condition of it, and there are odd barriers and obstacles in that route, which to me make it a very unattractive route.
Would you agree that the road, the Lower Dunton road, is extremely tight?
So which road?
The Lower Dunton,
Dunton.
Dunton road is extremely tight. There are various areas or sections of the road where it can be extremely difficult for 2 cars to pass safely at the same time. Are there any plans to change the structure of the road to accommodate for what would be 200-300 more cars?
Well, to my knowledge, and it might be best put to the appellant, there are no proposals to widen that road. In my limited site visits, I haven't observed problems with cars passing, so I can't really comment on that. And clearly, I'm aware that there is a footpath on the south side of Dunton Road, which crosses all the car house entrances, of course, as it would. I can't really comment more than that.
Sorry, I'd just like to return to the A127 footpath crossing a busy A road. For example, someone who would be using a mobility scooter, how would they navigate if it's a father or a mother with a child? How would they navigate the bridge with their young child?
Well, they couldn't. They would have to go all the way around the Loop Road and over bridge, which is shown on. Do you need to see? You've seen that, yeah. There is an alternative route, but in a mobility scooter, you couldn't go over that bridge.
Given the area, I guess it's quite rural. Would you expect there to be huge interest from transport companies to take up the new route, given that the current structure in place is quite limited? Do you think there would be far more interest from your First Buses, whoever's running the network, to put services around there when currently it's very limited? I know there'd be more footfall, but where it's currently quite limited and where there's hardly any bus services, I mean, why will the bus companies decide to put the route in?
It's difficult for me to comment precisely from what a bus company, and we haven't had any indication from a bus company about willingness to provide the service. What I could say is that there should be a good prospect whilst the service is subsidised, which is what the £1 million is for. So that's identified for a period of 5 years. The intention of the county council is that it will pump prime and therefore create demand. But we're talking about effectively King's Road, Dunton Road, King Road, and the new development as being the market that would serve that aspect of the service. And yes, there must be question marks as to whether it will be viable in the long term, i.e. after the subsidy ends. But I should caution that I'm not a bus operator. I can't really comment, on their financial considerations.
With regards to the bus route, obviously, if you are heading towards or working, or your travel expectations need you to go towards Dunton, is there any provisions for the bus service to run there? We're talking about access with regards to local amenities, places of work. Is that something?
I mean, heading west?
Yes.
I just would like to just check the bus route that's
Okay, yeah, no
proposed.
problem.
Looking at the statement of common ground with the county council, there's an ARDA drawing in appendix. It's just in the drawings at the rear of it. This identifies a route, my reading of it anyway, heading west, just west of the site, and then heading up towards Billericay. But it doesn't go further west towards the A127 junctions. It doesn't, no.
So
It
the answer's
basically
no.
goes north.
Yeah,
really.
so the answer to that is no.
Is
So
no, the
for
answer-
any residents or anybody working in Southfields Industrial Estate or needing to get to,
It doesn't provide any
there's
access
no,
there.
no, okay. Appreciate that. We've got some more.
Last question, really. Realised the transport part is subsidised for a period of time. What would your opinion be if at the 5-year point, for whatever reason, transport links would cease? What would your opinion be on that?
Well, as I said, actually, in cross-examination, I would have a grave, serious concerns because it means that this site will revert to, one assumes, the current level of minimal service. Certainly, I mean, what's it, 3 days, one service in each direction, 3 days a week, which is, it is not a service. It is effectively, it's not effectively a service as far as local residents are concerned. So if it does cease at that period, this would be a site that does not have easy access to public transport, is not within easy walking distance of services and facilities, but you can cycle places, and of course you can drive.
So there's a couple of other questions that I'm going to read them out. I personally have concluded that there will be adverse harm with the landscape and visual perspective. Do you agree or disagree with the professional opinion on the impact to the wider landscape and area that Mr. Reynolds?
I can't really comment on, it's not my area of expertise, so I think I'd have to rely on what Mr. Reynolds said to you.
Okay. And sorry, I'm just going to. And are you aware of the residents, the Rule 6 party, have raised concerns about the wider effects this development will have on the landscape and have specifically referenced the report of March 2023, which was given to the council during this consultation relating to this application?
I'm aware of it, yes.
Okay. So can you help the residents and the inspector understand why the LVIR report was not referenced in the officers' reports to the planning committee in March, April and June?
I had no involvement, so I can't assist you on that. I don't know.
Okay. And is the LVIR site specific to this application?
My reading of it is, yes, it is.
Okay. And you have visited this site?
I have
you
visited this site, yes,
undertaken?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's it regarding that. Thank you. And I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn or correctly here, but regardless of the need of housing, the MPPF 11D footnote 7 basically states that, regardless of the need of housing, Greenbelt would outweigh the weight of the need to build. If I believe I'm correct again.
Well, paragraph 11 is essentially concerned with identifying what the policy, which document should be used for determining the basis of applications. And in circumstances in Basildon, it is effectively saying that policies in the Greenbelt section should be applied. And it's the relevant paragraphs in there, which talk about in the context of inappropriate development, very special circumstances, and so on, that becomes a policy test that applies. That's really what the MPF is concerned with.
Okay, yeah, it's just that if developers develop the 6,000 properties that have been granted, we would meet our needs in this borough.
Is that a hypothetical question? If the need is 5,000 is in excess of 5,000 for over 5 years, or 6,000. Yes, if they have been, if they are developed or available to be developed with planning permission, there will be a 5-year housing land supply, but it's a hypothetical situation because it's not the case.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ollie.
Ms. Harris, just going back to the issue of the bus service and its frequency, as we understand it, hopefully would be if development goes ahead. Do you think it's likely or not that somebody would use the bus to go to work if the service ended at 7 p.m?
If they could guarantee that they're going to finish in plenty of time to catch the last bus, they might. If there's any uncertainty about how long it work, it would clearly drive. They would not choose that bus otherwise, or they would say, "I'm going to pay for a taxi or an Uber or whatever." But it's not a desirable end time.
You were asked about getting indications from operators in advance and whether that's normal. Has that happened in your experience, that a developer's approached an operator, or somebody at county council even has approached an operator in advance?
In other applications and proposals and appeals, yes, that is my experience.
I think you might have covered this with the inspector, but I just want you to say in summary, what do you make of the local highway authority signing up to saying that the site is sustainable, will be sustainable?
My personal view, and obviously I've not been party to those discussions, and we were not invited to have a three-way common statement, is that to me, the impression is given that they haven't thought it through properly. They have not really given time consideration to development plan policies, to NPPF, or to their own design standards. And that's a big concern to me.
I think it was sort of being put to you or inferred, and if I'm wrong or it's unfair, then I'll take it back. I think it was inferred that the guidance from 2000 might be a bit out of date, and that's not so relevant. What do you say about that?
Well, in the absence of, it is guidance that's sought to provide reasonable preferred and maximum potential walking distances. The nature of walking hasn't changed since then. We've still got 2 legs. We still walk at roughly the same speed. So it's still completely relevant in terms of the physical action and the physical and the mode of transport. It's still entirely relevant.
And finally, in relation to the employment area that you also touched on, Hemels, what kind of an employment area is that, according to your understanding?
I don't have the details of it, actually. I haven't visited it myself, so I can't really comment.
Okay, we can pick that up later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the council's case then. Mr. Simons, yesterday you indicated that you might bring a witness forward.
Exactly. So yes, what the thinking was that we do Mr. Chard this afternoon, and if we were perhaps able, it's 1 o'clock now, if we were having a sort of shorter lunch break, half an hour maybe, just as a starter for 10. I don't know what Ms. Ollie's got thinking is. If we did half an hour, so we started at 1:30, do him in chief, say 45 minutes. So these cross-examinations, like
What I thought about it, and bear with me here, I was thinking about whether I get through I think I possibly would,
Right.
but I possibly wouldn't, shading into probably wouldn't.
Okay.
And in terms of the lunch break, if we were just going to do human chief, I don't mind whatever
I see.
the duration of the lunch break. If I was going to cross-examine, I would want the full hour because I would want to reflect after having.
Perhaps it's maybe a bit more realistic then to use the afternoon, get as far as we do as evidence in chief, and then see where we get to. I was originally thinking I'd slightly underestimated how long Mr. Hodges would take. I was thinking we'd get through him in full today, but that perhaps is not likely. But even then, we're still, you know, doing okay. And we'd be ahead of ourselves, I think, going into tomorrow.
Okay.
If we do get Mr. Chard in chief this afternoon, and maybe that's it, possibly.
And you think that's going to be 45 minutes, do you?
Maybe up to an hour then, if we've got that time. But yeah, so if I'd still be happy with a shorter lunch break, 30 to 40 minutes or whatever.
Are you content with?
I'm certainly happy unless I need to.
Yeah, so if it's just chief,
I just would need a bit longer. So if we're just doing in chief,
if we're just doing evidence in chief, yeah.
I think that's probably likely. So
yeah.
Do you want the 45 minutes then?
No, well, we've got all our, we can do 30 minutes, we do 45 if you prefer, whatever.
What would you prefer?
I don't mind, I'm up to you. 30
Your
is
hands,
fine with
madam.
me.
Any preference? No.
30 is fine by us if that suits.
Okay, well, we'll return at 1:35 then, 5 o'clock in here. So the inquiry is adjourned. Thank you.